Welcome to the world of tomorrow. You are about to take a journey out of this world into the world of the future.
The atomic age was born.
The world of tomorrow became the world of today, bringing together all people in a new era of understanding.
Good sense requires that all of us prepare for any eventuality.
Imagine, if you can, an electronic brain operating at millionths of a second speed.
Electrical pulses transmitted with the speed of light.
Limitless power at man's command. On man's wisdom, on his firmness in the use of that power, depends now the future of his children and his children's children. But wisdom demands, too, that we take time to understand this force.
Combat Information Center is alert. Its radars probing the darkness, ready to give early warning of any unseen enemy.
But have no fear, we are monitoring the situation.
Yo, Steve, I woke up this morning and I realized that it has been 35 springs since I graduated high school in 1991.
Many moons ago.
Man, it's crazy to think 35
Wait, what year did you
years
graduate?
ago, 1991.
Dang, you are old.
I'm an old MFer, right? I am. But man, so I don't know. How do you feel about age? Just out of curiosity, because
I hate it.
Do you? I don't. It's a kind of a funny thing. I don't.
So I would say the only advantages that I see to age are the wisdom that, would be the wisdom that comes with it, but that wisdom almost always comes at the hands of suffering.
Yeah.
You learn a lot of
Word.
lessons the hard way. And those things are good to have. I can't tell you the number of times I have wished I could time travel back and sit myself down and be like, okay, there's some things you need to understand. And I know I wouldn't listen.
No.
Even to myself.
Well, I tell you one, and this is going to be like kind of basic, but I really wish I had told my idiot younger self, I'm talking 18, 19, 20, all the way up until yesterday, that, it doesn't hurt you to set aside $50 a paycheck and just park it somewhere. Because, I've got nothing. I mean, I literally have nothing.
Yeah.
And,
Same.
$50, I mean, I'm not going to bore the audience with a bad math lesson here, but $50 just parked into some kind of, I don't know, whatever, low yield, whatever account, and eventually transferring it over to, whatever these retirement accounts.
Don't you remember how every paycheck you were like, maybe someday, but right now I'm like negative 400 every month.
Yeah, literally every paycheck I've ever gotten was
and you're
like,
just
no.
floating. You're floating things because you can't pay them all. And then it's like, what are you going to do? It's like, I don't know about you, but for me, it's going to get better. And when it's better, I'll do the smarter thing, right? And then better just never shows up.
Yeah, I've never, look, this is not a sob story. I'm just being real here. I've never made $1. Like, I mean, I've never been ahead. Like not once in my entire life have I been ahead. Like I've had a couple of occasions, where I've, how about this? Like I've had like $4,000 because, I let the IRS keep my money for for 12 months interest free. But like beyond that, and then that just allows me to pretend for a few months that I don't have to worry about money. And then all of a sudden I'm like, it's March, April, it's April, let's say May, because I would always file early because I've always been a W-2 guy.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, gone. So I think that's really one that I would hold a gun to my high school graduating self and be like, dude, listen to me, do it. But I didn't listen to anybody who said that stuff then. So I guess why would I expect an older version of myself to go back in time and tell the idiot 18-year-old version in any way that would get through my thick skull? But alas, 35 years ago, it's a long time.
But you know what, though? I had this friend and kind of mentor 20 years ago when I worked in PR in DC, the creative director there was just this incredible, zany woman, like just unlike anybody I've ever met. Everyone in the building loved her because she was a genius, but she was wild, right? And I remember her telling me, she was like, if you want to be rich, you got to stay near the money. Like be an accountant, work in finance somehow. Like that's what you've got to do. But she couldn't do it because she was a creative person and I couldn't do it because I was. And so it was like, and she always told me, never trust people who are tan in the wintertime.
That is a great line. That is a great line. Well, it's so funny. So I'm in a Signal group chat. Shout out to the Signal group chat. Some of who watched our MTS here. And a couple of guys in there are business guys, right? And they're very successful, and they'll start talking, business stuff. And there was a former version of me who had been like, oh, like whatever, man, talk about business. But I'm sitting there, I'm older now. I'm hopefully a little bit more mature, and I'm listening to them, go back and forth. And I just, honestly, I sit there in awe of the way that their minds work. I mean,
100%.
They're so and it's it's definitely would have been counterintuitive to my 18-year-old self, but they're just so darn creative when it comes to like thinking of, something as pedestrian as like a roofing business or whatever, but it's so darn creative, Steve. And it's weird because, I spend all of my time, dealing with creative writing. I'm a kind of a creative person in a very sort of literal way, but not in that kind of way. Like they can just think about ideas to make money and they just go do it.
I think that there's something there where there's a kind of person who treats, the pursuit of wealth generation as a game, right? For them, it's a game. It's fun. And so the business or whatever, those are the pieces on the board and that's what they move around and it's strategic and they actually like have a good time doing that. My brain is not wired for that.
Yeah.
And I have never been successful unless I pursued my passion. And it doesn't always work, but it's like if I'm aligned with the things that I'm good at, the money comes.
Yeah, so that's weird.
Or has traditionally, not anymore, because everything's up in the air now. But
hey, we're on the way here.
By the way, I clicked on the YouTube monetization email I got this morning, and we have earned precisely $0 so far. So,
awesome.
So we are qualified, but not even 1 penny. There was a chart, and at the top of the chart was 0.003 cents, and there was no bar.
So you're saying there's a chance.
There's a chance.
There's a chance, right?
There's room to grow.
Right. Well, I don't know why that's the case, but I never feel dumber than when people start talking about making money. Like really, I can read, Ulysses, like Joyce's Ulysses, and like bring a group of students along with me and see all these incredible things, and I'm creating these sort of mental images through the book and doing all this sort of stuff. But when it comes to this, like my mind is like negative competence. It's the strangest thing. And I tell you, what I think it is, and I've never had a way of like getting around this or hacking it or whatever it is. It's fear, man. I'm like, money scares the crap out of me. And it's always like a privation model. And I always feel like and I know this is bad, right, people? So, you can say what you will in the comments, like, fine, I get, but it's like, I'm scared of it. And
I don't know how it was for you. I mean, growing up, money was always the biggest source of stress in our house.
Yeah.
And I think that gets into you young. It did for me, and it's like, it just became something that was always a source of tension and difficulty. And I didn't have a great head for numbers anyway.
Right.
And so it was like, anytime I get near it, I'm just like, man, this just stresses me out. It stresses you out when you have things that you're obligated to do, but the resources aren't enough and you don't know how to overcome it too. That's the other thing. It's like,
man,
you're not gonna practice this game if every time you sit down to deal with your finances, you're like, oh, I'm way short. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's not fun. There's nothing fun about that.
No,
What's fun is when you have the money to invest. And to like do a project over here or try this. And if it fails, you're going to be okay. Like I could see why that would be fun for people who have gotten that far.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's, you know, you were talking right before we popped on. We both spent some good old fashioned time at the car place getting our cars fixed. And, that really blows a lot of money and it blows. But what's interesting to me is that for me, like all of the realm of finance, and I really mean personal finance here. I don't know anything about the actual world of finance, but it's a humiliation ritual for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, Kale, like it's your weekly time to feel like a bucket of garbage. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to feel like a bucket of garbage. And all this stuff goes out. And it's like, it gets to the point where I start like, so yesterday I was at the car place getting the car fixed, and I had to stop at Chipotle to get something to eat because I was away from home for this huge chunk in the middle of the day. Usually I eat at home or at the dining hall here at the school. And, it's like Chipotle is like friggin' $20 now. And I'm just thinking to myself, all right, well, that's $20. And I'm start doing the drawdown from whatever my paycheck is. And I'm like, well, that's 20. If I do that 3 more times, like, holy crap, like this in my mind, it just does this sort of this cascade of it's all falling apart.
Yeah, 100%. I did the same thing. I was working last night and I realized it was almost 9, and around here, all the restaurants close at 9.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything ready to cook at home. And I've been eating the same things over and over out of the freezer, stuff I can just heat up or whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to stop and I'm going to grab 3 tacos from the taco place.
Oh, yeah.
Before it closes. So I go over there, I grab their quesadilla combo, I get a little bag of chips and queso to go with it, $24.83.
Yeah. Yeah. Holy,
this is not gourmet food. This is fast casual. And I'm just like, that is a little less than half of what I made, working in 4 hours. And I was just like, what are you doing?
Right. And
everything feels completely incommensurate and disjointed with each other.
And like, look, before people get all, well, okay, you can go to McDonald's, but no, I can't. I literally can't go to McDonald's. I can't even go to the frickin' Subway. I have to go to friggin' Chipotle because it's the only thing I can friggin' eat. Right?
Yeah.
Because
well, that's
of my
the other
allergies.
thing. You have gluten issues and everything else.
It's just it's so ridiculous. Wah,
no, let's cry. Let's bitch. Let's go. No,
I know. So, at any rate, I marvel at people's ability to look at numbers as a medium of creativity, because for whatever reason, my mind short circuits when it comes to this thing. Panic sets in, and I don't know what to do. Right. So, as a segue here, Steve, we've been we've had a whole episode on AI abundance and all this sort of stuff, but I've noticed a couple of things about AI. I kind of want to spend a little time on AI if you're all right with that today. I'm starting to have some doubts about what AI is going to do. I certainly believe it's going to be some kind of massive force of disruption still. But I'm sort of wondering if people are stepping away from it a little bit. Are you feeling this vibe, or am I making it up?
I feel like it is a black box.
Mm.
It's Schrodinger's cat, so to speak. It's either going to be the most, earth-shaking thing that ever happens, or it's going to somehow be a relative nothing burger that's still costing, thousands of American jobs every month. I think people are fed up with how much they hear about it. I think people are probably fed up with how much they use it. I get fed up with it. I use it all the time because it's useful, but I also find it frustrating because you've got to coax it and cajole it and, deal with whatever its parameters and guidelines are and all this kind of stuff. It's undoubtedly useful, but, there was this Mark Andreessen. I come back to him a lot because he's a big commenter on this space.
Yeah.
And he was talking the other day about, coders that he knows. Like, he's like, the top coders are making like $50 million a year. And he's like, and they're doing I know. I was like, what? Not in my world, but okay.
What does that look like a week, Steve?
I don't even know. But he was talking about how AI has not replaced them. It has made them so recklessly productive that they're not sleeping. He's like, you can see they're not taking care of themselves, but they're happy because they're producing work at volumes they never thought possible. They're working on projects they never thought they'd get to. They're working on personal stuff. They're shipping products. They're doing whatever. And I just like, that doesn't sound good to me.
You mean just in terms of like the human person? Or?
Yeah, like why? Yeah. He was excited about the fact that these guys were neglecting themselves because of productivity.
Yeah.
And we've had multiple conversations about human utility and the tie to economic value. Like what you're doing with your students is massively valuable, in a real sense, but it's not necessarily economically valuable.
Yeah, boy, that disconnect is real, isn't it?
All the most valuable human endeavors right now have virtually no economic utility. And it's like, it's great that you're coding more software. I don't want another piece of software. I already have too many. Like, I don't know. So I think your sense is correct. I think people are fed up. I think they're also more engaged with it than ever. And then, you have the encyclical come out this week. So everybody's talking about consciousness, not consciousness, what it means, what it doesn't, which is in and of itself interesting that this encyclical got so much attention outside of the Catholic sphere.
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about that. Full disclosure, I have not read it yet. I'm not all that eager to read it, to be honest with you. But I'm going to read it because, I'm a nerd and it's sort of in my wheelhouse. So I'm in the middle of grading exams and writing comments right now. So it's a little, it's just a tough time, but I will get to it because monitoring the situation is more important. This podcast, is more important than all that other stuff, but I'll get to it. But, I was thinking about the phenomena, and I have misgivings. I think I'll play polite today.
Which phenomenon are you talking about?
Well, with the fact that a Catholic Pope can write a document and promulgate it, and it gets shout out to Hillary. That's right, Hillary.
So Hillary, our friend Hillary White,
put it back up.
Made us these mugs based on a thumbnail for an episode that never actually went live. I asked Grok. Kale is cut off here. I had asked Grok because I had a boring episode thumbnail. Can you please make it more fun? And so it was the one about UFOs and demons and stuff. And so it makes these demons and aliens with lollipops. And I've got a tinfoil beanie with a propeller on it. And then Kale's hair was standing straight up. It was incredible. And so she sent these to us without telling us what they were. We both got them this week.
So,
Thanks,
and of course, on my rush to the studio here at, the Monitoring the Situation studio, Northeast, as opposed to yours, Southeast, I left it. And so I will proudly rock that mug next episode. So Hillary, thank you. Number one, it's amazing. And number two, audience, there's part 2 of this great mug series.
I've been conspicuously drinking out of it this whole time, and you haven't noticed until now. So I decided to be even more conspicuous.
Well, okay. Can I have another? I'll make another confession. So as the ranking old here in the podcast, I was born in 73. You were born in 77. Yeah, okay. So as the ranking old, I have trifocal lenses, like progressive lenses. And when I bought them, they asked me like the distance that I wanted them at. And I was like, whatever, man, just do standard. So when I record a podcast, I literally can't see a thing.
Oh, that's why you're so good at looking at the camera. See, I look at the screen and I try to position you so that, because I feel like I'm looking at you while I'm talking to you, but then my eyes are down here, not up here.
Yeah.
And
so I can't see a dang thing. It's kind of better if I have it's sometimes I could take my glasses off and see a little bit better.
Would it make you feel better if I wore these even though I don't need them?
Yeah, like that's amazing. No, take them off. You don't look like Steve to me. So okay, but let's get back to the Pope here. So it's remarkable, now, like I'm sure everybody in the audience knows your history, especially with the former Pope and
Womp
all
womp.
that, and blah blah blah. We don't have to rehearse all of that business, but I want to talk about just the phenomena of the thing, and I think that's maybe where you're getting at. Is that it is remarkable in the year of our Lord 2026 that a Pope can put out a document like this, and like lots of people are talking about it. I mean, this is not Pope John Paul II coming out with a Redemptoris Hominis, or these are very impressive and great encyclicals. But man, it's so weird that a Pope, after everything, after all the mess of the last decade and all the mess with the sexual abuse crisis and all this stuff, that a Pope can still scratch out, an encyclical and promulgate it, and people pay attention. I just think that's an interesting phenomena unto
Well, I mean,
itself.
I think that it's fair to say that this is such, we have banged this drum so much. This is such a civilization altering issue if it comes to fruition in the way that we've been told that it will, right? And people want a moral reckoning with this. Like, what does it mean for humanity? Now, I didn't read it either because, like I said on the Substack yesterday, there's just no reason for an encyclical to be over 10,000 words. Stop it.
Yeah.
40,000+ word, like the average novel draft in America, because I've done NaNoWriMo and stuff, is 50 to 60,000 words.
Wow.
42,000 words is too much, or 45 or whatever it is. And it's like, it's because of a lack of precision. And now a lot of people are beginning to be critical of it, because the less precise you are, the more of a Rorschach test it becomes. Some people are saying it's heterodox. Some people are saying it's orthodox. Some people are saying it addresses the issues. Some people are saying it doesn't. It just becomes all things to all people when it's vague. And that's the feeling that I'm getting from the roundups that I'm seeing from those who are taking the time to go through it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think we probably owe our audience, maybe in a couple of weeks we can actually, do it. So, I don't want to get into the specifics of it just yet. But I think we should just, I'm sure you and I will have two different takes, and that'll be kind of fun. Right. But, I was thinking about it. It's like nobody in the Orthodox world can move that dial,
nobody anywhere, really.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, the president of the United States could come out with some sort of a document on it, and it would.
It's the closest it would come, but it would lack that, at least the appearance of moral authority
and weight. It's weird. After everything, it's still kind of there. But so the reason why I've been so thinking about this whole AI thing is, I continue to do my work in the classroom, and, we continue to see it. And, I run a decidedly shocker, low-tech classroom, but it's clearly having an effect on everybody. You talk about your own fatigue in using it, even though you sort of feel compelled to use it all the time. And, I'm probably a little bit less so on that edge. Like, my wife loves, her chat, and she talks to it all the time and asks it questions, and we're trying to run a small business, and, it's been very helpful in that regard. But I'm starting to wonder, and I know I have a tendency toward apocalypticism and all that sort of thing, but I wonder though if the consumer available options right now, and we've talked about this before too, but the consumer versions that are being used, do you feel in some way that they are inadvertently, or maybe vertently, I don't know, whatever the opposite of inadvertently is, purposely?
Advertently, I would guess.
Yeah. Is there some sense where they're conditioning us to treat it as totally normal and totally necessary? And at some point, you can get paid versions of these things, right? Mm-hmm. But at some point, do you think they're just going to raise that bar just out of necessity of paying for compute, that they've hooked everybody on this thing, and now it's kind of the cost of doing business,
I mean, I think that probably the closest analog to that would be, the internet, and then the advent of social media, and then the way that that's changed over time. I mentioned earlier, working at a PR firm in DC back in 2006 to 2009.
Yeah.
It was really like, it was a high-end firm with a lot of very impressive people who had been presidential appointees, advisors to U.S. presidents, bureau chiefs of major news networks, anchors, lawyers, like a lot of, my immediate boss had been the press secretary for NASA, appointed by Bill Clinton. There were some really impressive minds there, and I learned a lot from those people, but it was interesting because it was the very early days of social media. At the time, we were calling it new media.
Yeah.
You remember, like Facebook went public around 2006, 2007, Twitter about the same time, but it didn't really pick up until around 2008.
8 or 9, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think the first tweet that Jack Dorsey ever put out was late 2006, maybe early 2007.
Yeah.
And so, we were kind of wrestling with, what does this mean in the world of public opinion and influence? Because the whole point of PR is you're telling the story that, your client wants to get out there. Ideally, you're telling the truth. You're not lying to people, but you're highlighting the things that you think change people's value proposition, because the basic idea is, when it comes to media, perception is reality. That was the understanding that we had. If your client's getting just beaten to death in the news, tell the positive stories, show the good side of the company, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so we engaged with bloggers, and we we did outreach to them. I ghost wrote for corporate executives, Fortune 100 companies and things like that, because they didn't write their own blogs. That you got to try. Killdozer is coming through your wall.
Looks like it's a lawn day, as usual.
Yeah, as usual. So, but anyway, the reason that I bring this all up is because there was a lot of wrestling with, what does this mean? How does it change things? And we had an attorney, the in-house counsel, who used to work at a big oil company, and he was a really smart guy, good guy. But he just kept saying, blogs are a fad. They're just a fad. All this stuff is just a fad, right? And there was, I think that feeling comes every time a new technology begins to become ubiquitous. There's just no way that this new thing that we lived without forever, that's suddenly here, is going to be important 10 years from now, right? And so, to go back to your question, I think the internet went from, I think I first got on in 1992 or 1993. I mean, to the point where I literally had to go in person to an office building for a sit-down meeting, where they handed me a Ziploc bag with discs, like floppy discs inside, saying, you have to insert these to set up your TCP/IP settings on your computer so that you can use your modem to get on the internet, right? And I got a certificate saying I was one of the first 200 people in my county that had it. Right. The internet was a very, very different thing in 1993 than it was in 1997, than it was in 2001. And then when social media came, and for whatever reason, people are talking about this a lot this week online. I keep seeing it. About how the internet used to be full of all these interesting websites, and we would go to different places and we would read different things. And now you go to like 3 different sites and they all aggregate everything in one place.
Exactly.
And so we get corralled into those. And then what ends up happening? Well, they either leverage your attention for advertising dollars. They all do that. Or they get you to pay a premium fee so that you don't have to see all the ads. Like our viewers who are watching YouTube, if they have YouTube Premium, don't realize how bad and how unskippable the ads have become.
Yeah, that's true.
But they're terrible when you're not on a paid plan. Same thing, with X. I have X Premium Plus, which fortunately for me pays for itself.
Right.
Because the payouts I get from creator revenue sharing are a little bit higher than what I pay.
Yeah.
But it's like you end up paying to get access to the best version that's available to you as a consumer of the thing that becomes ubiquitous that you have to use, right? And so I think that's the model for AI. I think AI is the next version of whatever the internet represented for us. In terms of, you didn't need it, now you do. Well, you and I have talked about that moment where people started getting issued BlackBerries at work so they could be on email all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you couldn't just go home at night and enjoy your family. You had to be on call at all times in case something came up, right? And so the workday just becomes 24/7. And I feel like that's where we're headed with this. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. It does. But I guess what I'm wondering, I can't escape, look, you hear these stories and I mix it up a decent amount with some folks on X who are like in the belly of the beast, so to speak, right? They're in Silicon Valley. They code, they do these sorts of things. And I cannot tell you how many stories I hear of folks who know what they're doing, but they don't feel like they have any choice, but that, their boss gives them a new initiative or a new directive, in this case, to train some AI agents. And they know that they're essentially training the bot to replace first all the people below them. And then invariably they're being told to train the bot to replace them. And, that's just nasty stuff, man.
That is. I mean people have been forced to do this without outsourcing and offshoring for years.
Yeah. This is true. And, I think that this is downstream from making efficiency the highest value, right? I mean, I don't think either of us would argue that efficiency is important, right? I mean, like I want my car to be efficient. I want my efforts to be efficient.
To a point.
Right. And so, and we all recognize in narrow confines, like what efficiency can mean. But I think we're all pretty wide-eyed about what the cost of efficiency can be. But there doesn't seem to be any kind of governing, small g first. There doesn't seem to be any kind of governing ethos of when is enough. When is the worshiping at the altar of efficiency good enough to afford human flourishing, but not bad enough to avoid human extinction.
Well,
right?
I mean, you hear about these software programs that companies started implementing after they didn't just allow, they promoted work from home during COVID. Then people kept working from home, and now it's like you have to install all these spyware things on your computer that monitor your keystrokes and what are you doing and all this. And it's like, I don't want to be in a surveillance environment like that. Like, give me a job. I want to do the job. If I get it done efficiently, if I'm more efficient, I'm going to slack off a little bit during the day. I'm going to spend more time, talking to my coworkers or doing whatever. Like, rate me on what I get done. Don't create more work for me because I'm more efficient. I mean, this is something that every smart kid learns.
Right, of course.
In school, is that if you get done with your work first, you don't get rewarded for that. You get busy work.
Yeah, I remember that. It was only cool. I remember in second grade, my teacher had this set up in such a way that if I made my way through, she called it workshop, and there was these panels on top of above the chalkboard, right? And you'd be able to kind of work your way through all of your work. And at the end, you could sort of like, the last panel was like choose your own adventure kind of a thing. So it was great for me because I would like rifle through all my work. I was smart enough to kind of get that stuff done, and then I could read.
Right.
So it was great.
I actually had the same thing in second grade. We had SRA. Do you remember SRA?
I do. Yeah.
It was like these color-coded, like cardstock, almost laminated things, and they were in a box. And it was like the lowest level was, kindergarten, first grade reading, and then you could progress through them.
That's right.
And it would go all the way up to, junior high or whatever it is. And so in second grade, I read the entire box, like everything, all the way to the end. And I was like, okay, give me more. What else is there?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like, I don't know how we went up down this road, but the idea is just like, unfortunately, efficiency doesn't always have commensurate benefits.
That's really well put, and so I am I'm a lot worried about that, of course. I don't know if it's going to take everybody's job. I go back and forth on that, but what my concern about it, I tweeted about it just this morning. But, and I think you saw it, you commented on, you said, oh, this might be something we can talk about. But, Aristotle famously says in the opening of the Metaphysics, I think, all men by nature desire to know. And it's kind of like one of those foundational, Aristotle quips. And I think it's true. I do. I think it's basically true, or true enough, or something like that. But I am wondering, though, if the digital world in which we increasingly live out more and more and more of our lives is not malforming that kind of latent childlike sense of wonder, right? Because that's really what Aristotle is talking about, or at least my appreciation of what Aristotle is talking about, is that, we are wondering creatures, right? And not only do we have the ability to experience wonder, right, as to sort of be awe-inspired by something, but also just that sense of wonder as to, I wonder about X, I wonder about Y, I wonder about Z. And, I know for both of us who grew up in an analog world, that sense of wonder was really limited, but in almost like a kind of counterintuitive way, because our ability to satiate our wonder was constricted or confined or limited, we would just gobble up anything that we could get our hands on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We couldn't just take out the black mirror in our pocket and whatever. I mean, how many different times a day do we do that with Grok or chat? Like, I wonder about this, and you just sort of do it. And my concern, is that for guys like us who can never satisfy that sense of wonder, I mean, we're both likes to understand what's going on guys, right? Thus monitoring the situation. For us, monitoring is our way of making sense out of the world. We're getting all these inputs and we're kind of interacting with it. We're doing these sorts of things, but our formation was governed by the limitations of a non-digital world, of a friction-filled analog world. And I have this nagging sense, and I'm kind of watching it unfold in the classroom, right? That for some significant chunk of people, and I'm talking here students now, I'm not talking about everybody in the world, but for some significant portion of the student population, they're not curious, right? They're not wonder filled at all. Uh, you know, and I don't know what to do with this, Steve. Like, and I can't help but think, because having the world at your fingertips for guys like us, like I remember when you had to pay for data on your phone, and you know, or Wi-Fi was at a premium. Where am I going to find Wi-Fi so I don't have to pay for data? Um, you know, there's not enough Wi-Fi in the world to satisfy our curiosity. But do you think maybe that is because we grew up in a world in which data was expensive?
My gut inclination is no.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you can argue that we built better investigatory muscles because it was harder to get to the answers, but the questions came from within, right? And so it's like, I defy anybody to find me a normal, healthy 3-year-old child who doesn't go through the but why to everything
Funny
that you
story
say to them.
So that's a great story. I was at Chipotle yesterday, eating my burrito bowl, and I was grading because I had to wait to go to the next thing, and I was already out there, and
grading, grading, not
yes,
grating.
Sometimes it is grading, Steve. Sometimes it is grating, but I was grading. Anyway, this young dad, he was probably 30, maybe late 20s, and he has a little daughter there with him, and she was my guess is she was probably 3 to 4, maybe at 5, but that age zone.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting next to the drink fountain where you get your stuff and your napkins and your forks, and she just started. She was pointing at everything. What's that? What's that? Where is that? What comes out of there? Why do you want that? And she's just doing this whole thing, and I just had this big smile on my face, and he's like, you know how it is. You're in that moment. You're like, okay, we just need to get this stuff. We need to get back to the car because we got to go somewhere to go. And so I just kind of leaned over and I said, enjoy it. Right. Yeah. I said, mine are old now. They don't ask me anything. But enjoy it. Right.
But no dad who's dealing with that hours and hours and hours can actually they know intellectually, okay, this guy's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But good God, I have explained this 13,000 times and they're still asking why.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So your instinct is absolutely correct. Right. I think that, and maybe this is what Aristotle is sort of riffing on. But that we do have this, what's that? What's that? What's that? Why? Right. It's the what, and then the why questions, which are, can be frustrating as a dad, but there's just something kind of very real about that. But what if, there's that weird moment where kids stop that, though, isn't there?
But I think, first of all, you and I have never lost that. I am and have been immersed in tech. I mean, I just got done telling you I was on the internet in the early 90s before anybody I knew.
Yeah.
Right. I have been immersed in tech for over 30 years. I have never lost that curiosity. So if there's a causal relationship, I feel like I would experience some mitigation of curiosity. If anything, it actually makes it worse because now it's now I have way more ways of getting the answers and I have to do way more work to sort through it. But I don't go through a single day where I don't wonder things and want to know. And so to me, I think there's always been a significant portion of the population that's happy with bread and circuses.
Okay. Yeah. So you're making a kind of argument for a kind of a distribution or a spectrum that while we could say, Aristotle is correct, that the degree with which all men desire to know is not equal.
Yeah. And I don't know if, inquisitiveness has any documented correlation with IQ. I don't know if it, Pareto distributions on IQ are there. We look at average IQ I think in America it's around 98. It's higher than other countries, but it's still kind of low. I think that there's a vast number of people who are simpler in their mental faculties and they're more easily satiated, if they're given some other thing to think about. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just
no, I know.
There has to be some explanatory power behind why I think people have always done this. And I don't know if there are other historical sources that talk about those people, because Aristotle wasn't average, No,
of course not.
And the circles that he traveled in were all very intelligent men who, thought about things. They were philosophers. That's what they did. I believe that it is innately in us, but I think that some people are more easily satisfied by being handed something that feels good than by continuing to work and understand and dig through stuff and figure it out and write about it and talk about it. I mean, think of how hard it is to find friends where you can have the kind of conversations we have on this show. It's very difficult.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah. I wonder, as I'm hearing you talk this out loud, this is helpful, I suppose, if not a little bit depressing, but I think my sensibilities are just really kind of broadly small d democratic. It's well, I think about X, Y, and Z, and I think X, Y, and Z are really interesting. Everybody must be interested in these things, or everybody must have these questions. And maybe I'm just kind of uncomfortable with admitting that that's not true.
Well, we've done a couple of episodes in a row about UFO stuff because it's been in the news, right?
Yeah.
The number of people who care about that, even though it's coming out of the White House, or we joke about how a UFO could land on the White House lawn and people will be like, okay, but gas is still $4.29 a gallon, right?
Yeah.
There's not, for those of us who have this kind of way of looking at the world, we're like, that would maybe be the most significant discovery in history, right? And everybody else is like, okay, well, I got a show to watch. I'm going to scroll through Instagram, whatever. So I think you have to break it down, and I don't have the institutional knowledge to know like how dopamine, induction works against curiosity. I do think a lot of people, I think in general, I mean, you look at America and the revolution, like it was over way less than what we put up with now, right? Like,
Gosh,
like
yeah.
people are very much sedated by entertainment, by all the things that we have available to us. I would say that the biggest correlation between what you're talking about and generalized human behavior is nobody has a chance to ever be bored. Like, do you ever try to just let yourself be bored now? Because I don't. I have to force it. But like to put away any stimulus, no books, no screens, no music, no podcasts, no nothing, and just sit and let your mind wander. It feels bad because we're so used to being stimulated all the time.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you this, but I've about a year ago, I stopped using the Apple AirPods, the wireless things that just go in your head.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And so now I use the wired ones. It's not like I'm raw dogging, as they say. But I have started to, I wake up every morning at the same time. I make my coffee. I do my little morning routine, and then I take the dogs on a walk. About a 45 to an hour long walk in the morning. And like I always listen. I mean, that's where I listen to my podcast primarily. But I've started to, you know, not every day, but go on a walk with nothing. I've got my analog watch on me, and I'm just walking. And I'm listening to the birds because it's springtime now. It's the birds are all over the place, and the dogs are, sniffing and darting all over the place, and it's kind of cool. But there's this sort of this sneaking guilt that I have, like, well, but I'm not keeping up on stuff.
100%.
Yeah.
Or to give you a different example, so last night I got done working, I came home, I ate. I was playing a game for a while, and it was a game where you have to build stuff and automate things, and those kind of games I lose track of time, right? So I look up the clock and I'm like, oh crap, it's 2:30 in the morning, whatever, I got to get off. And I go and I lay down in bed, and I usually watch some TV before I fall asleep to just kind of like numb out because I need to just get out of my head. But last night I decided to just push the TV. It's on a rolling stand because it's a small place. I pushed it over to the wall. I laid down. I took some magnesium glycinate because that helps you to go to sleep. And I just laid there and I tried to not think about anything. And I do this thing. I mean, people love coming at me for, leaving the faith, but I am an agnostic who prays all the time. I'm always talking to the God I'm not sure is there. And I'm like, hey, this is a great time to talk to me if you want to.
Yeah. Here I am.
Just try not to think.
Here I am.
I can't shut it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just, my mind was just jabbering at me. And I was like, for the love of God, stop. Like, just be quiet. Just lay here and be quiet. And I don't know how to do it. And I don't know if that's a function of the way that my brain works. I don't know if it's because I'm so accustomed to overstimulation. I assume I could improve my results with time and effort. People who do meditation say that you can. But to just sit for 10 minutes and not allow your mind to wander, not think about anything, be present in the moment, focus on the breathing, whatever it is. Like, if you try to do that, you will realize like how wired our brains are. They just don't want to rest.
Yeah. I really like this, and sort of connecting it to the affordances of boredom. We are clearly stimulated, as you're saying, all the time, right? The inputs are all around us. The amount of time in which we're not being stimulated externally by some kind of digital device is increasingly, less and less and less, right? I mean, and that's got to do something to a person.
Well, I mean,
right?
Think about the fact that, like, I don't know how it is for you. I have had conversations during my marriage where it was like, why do you look at your phone first thing in the morning? I have had conversations since my separation where I don't look at my phone in the morning, and then I get a text from that same person and they're upset that I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, nobody texts me, so I don't look at that in the morning. But what ends up happening if you have enough incoming is you wake up in the morning and your first thought is what things happened while I was asleep that need my attention or that I need to know about. Like, did the world end? Did something blow up? Did somebody get in a car accident? Like, there's so many things you don't know, and you pick it up to be like, what happened while I made this mistake of going to sleep?
Yeah, like right. You have to like kind of situate yourself back. Like, okay, like, where do I fit right now? And it reminds me of that story you were telling earlier about the Silicon Valley guys who were just like working, because every time they're not working, they're losing, hundreds of thousands of dollars as the minutes click away. I would imagine that would be extremely difficult to go to sleep or not to be stimulated. But how do you appreciate the costs of that, though? Right, the costs of not allowing yourself to be constantly stimulated.
I mean, I not only think that it is dehumanizing in the sense where, we are cyborgs already. It's just that it's here, right?
It
isn't integrated
external.
yet.
It's technically external. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's right here. And I mean, how many times, anybody in the audience, how many times have you reached for your phone without thinking about it? How many times have you not had your phone in a pocket, but you feel a buzz in that pocket and you check and then you realize your phone's not even there?
Yeah. The phantom buzz, right?
Like, how many red lights do you not pull out your phone and look at it? How many grocery store lines do you not pull out your phone and look at it? Like, I don't know what we're looking for, but every time we pause, it's like we're trying to open this portal back into the world where we're jacked in. And we were having a conversation on X this week about the book Neuromancer, which came out in 1984.
Yeah.
William Gibson wrote the novel, and it's where the term cyberpunk comes from. It's where the term The Matrix comes from.
Yeah.
A lot of our kind of conceptual social imaginary around cyberspace and being online and being jacked in and all this kind of stuff, it all comes from this book that was written at a time where nobody even had the internet.
Yeah, right.
Which was a crazy thing.
Yeah.
The first science fiction novel to ever win the Hugo, the Nebula, and the Philip K. Dick Award. It's a dense book. It's a difficult book to get through, but it's super interesting because it's like, there in that conceptual universe, you don't just like get on a computer. Like, you literally plug something into the back of your neck and you're online. That's where those visuals from the Matrix movies come from. And Gibson is big on brand names, so he calls them Microsofts. Like, that's what he calls them back in 1984, where you slot in a Microsoft or whatever. But it's like you jack in and you have a visual representation of data that you then are swimming through and figuring out how to manipulate in a very virtual reality kind of way. It was way ahead of its time. We don't do that, but at the same time, we do.
Well, it's close, yeah.
There's a layer removed. Like, I'm still at Costco waiting in that long line.
Right.
But I'm like, oh, well, I gotta wait for 3 carts to go through, so I guess I'm gonna lean on the cart and look at my freaking phone.
Right, because heaven forbid, and again, I'm not casting stones at you.
Go for it.
Heaven forbid that you have a moment of self-reflection, right? A moment in which you're kind of with yourself.
And we all avoid it for different reasons. Sometimes it's because we don't want to think about the things that are going on in our lives. I mean, that's me a lot these days. Sometimes it's because it's an addiction to stimulation and we want to feel stimulated. Sometimes we're lonely and we want to interact with other people.
Yeah, exactly.
And that may be the only way that we can. I mean, for many years, the only intellectual conversations I got to have were online still to this day.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody in person to sit down and have a discussion like this with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the genesis of our friendship, right? I mean, I have never in my life cold emailed anyone. But I cold emailed you because I had this sort of nagging sense that I think Steve might be someone who I could have a conversation with.
And thank God you did, because it's the only enduring friendship I've made since graduating from college. I mean, I was thinking about that, and all of my friends are people who I knew or met from senior year of high school till senior year of college. Like, those people are all still in my life. They're the godparents to my children. They're, guys I cannot see for years, and we get back together, and it's like we just pick up where we left off. But as an adult married man, I made some friends, but not like at a level of like we call each other, or we want to do a show together. We're constantly in contact. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't even happen with my old friends. Like, we're barely ever in touch.
Right.
And so it's really, really difficult as we're all atomized and distributed around the country. Like, I have friends in Virginia and in Maryland or Pennsylvania and in Michigan and in Arizona and all these places where I don't live, and I would have to drive for days. I mean, you're 12 hours away.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't know, but that's part of it too. Like, I feel like historically people grew up in communities and they more or less stayed there. They might go to the big city nearby for work, but like they didn't they didn't disperse. I mean, this is something that affects us, more widely, like families having to try to raise kids on their own, away from the parents, because they had to go wherever the work was, or, it all has such an effect on us that it's difficult to kind of unwind all the factors that make us feel like, I need to connect, I need to be online, I need to be stimulated.
I think what's easy for us to forget, I think, the two of us, but also just maybe anybody in the audience, is like, this is like really new.
So
it's
new.
Like really new. It's a novel situation.
It's in our lifetime.
Yeah. Right.
When we were kids, like brand new, little kids, like that was like the last of the old ways.
Yeah. And then then sort of the digital comes and just sort of just amps that up, in a literally artificial way. Right. Now, it doesn't mean you can't find fellowship in this way. You and I are a perfect example, of it.
But we still have to exercise it mostly online.
That's right.
I mean, we're recording this over the internet right now.
Right. And, I don't know how are we going to sort all this out, individually? It's a question you and I chew on pretty much every day. But when you start thinking of like the next level up, the community level, and at the state level, and the national level, and the international level, right? You sort of play that kind of fractal game. It's like, man, I don't really know what a possible answer could even look like. So therefore, my instincts then are to be like, well, the heck with it all. Right. But that's also, that's a myth too.
Well, I think that it's not only that it's so new. We've only been dealing with this for 20 years.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying it didn't start ramping up before that, but it's been 20 years since everybody got online and started interacting through social media platforms, flagrantly violating Dunbar's number when it comes to the number of friends you can actually sustain.
Man, okay, weird that you brought that up, because I keep going. I want to talk.
Okay, let's not forget it.
I've been obsessed with the Dunbar number. Don't worry.
Yeah, so if you don't know people, it's Dunbar. I forget who he was. He was a sociologist or something, but
English.
Speculated that you could only actually maintain relationships with at most 150 people.
Yeah,
and not all of those very well. And
there are layers, like there's like a Dunbar level 1, 2, I think there's 7 different layers, but you basically max out at below 200, let's call it.
Yeah. And so, the thing that I think is actually taking the most damage from this, and I suppose curiosity would be at least tangentially related, is imagination and creativity.
Yeah.
Kids, especially now, kids who grow up with screens, get bored so easy and so fast, but so do we.
Yeah.
Like, and so, understanding that to sit with boredom, like people used to always, the old saw is necessity is the mother of invention. And I would tell people back in the day, no, boredom is. because if you're bored, you have to come up with something to do to entertain yourself. And so you'll create worlds if you have to, because your mind wants something to chew on. We weren't meant to sit and not think about anything all the time. Like, as much as I think it's a valuable exercise to try to get control of your mind, like that empty meditative state is not what human beings were meant for. That's a palate cleanser, in my opinion. I think we're meant to sit and think about things, and if we don't have something to distract us, if we don't have that feeling you're talking about, which I know so intimately well, of I am doing something, like I'll drive around and do deliveries, and I'll be like, I should be listening to this book. I should be listening to this podcast. Like I've been reading this book about Jack Parsons, and I actually enjoy the book, but I'm at a point where I've been listening for like 9 hours, and I'm getting bored. Because I'm fascinated by the story, but I don't care quite this much, you know, and it's like, should I move on to a fiction book? And then I'm like, oh, well, if I do that, there's this novel I haven't finished, and I started it a year ago. I should finish that. There's all these shoulds that start happening. Right?
I know. Yeah, that should. Yeah,
you know, and it's like, no, but I should be doing topical stuff because we're going to do a show on this, or I should do this because I got to write about that. And it's like, you feel like every minute of every day needs to be consumed with some kind of like ingestion of information. And you can't create from that place. And I don't know how much this has to do with the fact that everything coming out of Hollywood is so derivative. I mean, I think, you know, because that is the most obvious and expressive form of creative arts in America that kind of was uniquely American. It's Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could say jazz music before that, but
yeah, I think you're right. I don't think.
But like this is where American mythology comes from. You know, we've talked about growing up with Star Wars, and by the way, they're going to release allegedly the original, unedited, un-CGI'd version of Star Wars for the 50th anniversary next year in the theaters. That'll be interesting.
I'm there.
It's hard to believe it's been 50 years.
I know.
But the point is, though, is that as a creative person who tries to come up with things to write about, you know, like I don't come up with ideas about what to write about when I'm screwing around online. I come up for things to write about if I'm taking a walk, if I'm driving somewhere, if I'm in a shower, if I'm in an unself-aware moment where my mind can wander. That's when it goes, hey, this is an interesting thing to think about. What about that, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. But if we're always suppressing that, we're not making anything. I think it's fundamentally contrary to being a maker to constantly consume. You have to consume some. I think creativity is a metabolic output of the ingestion of various stimuli. But you have to have a balance, and we have been trained to a point where it's like, how many times have you thought, I can never get through all the books I want to read. I can never listen to all the podcasts that I've saved. I can never X, Y, and Z.
You know, I think the, you know, I think what you're talking about, you know, again, is sort of akin to noise, right? And it's shallow, right? That, you know, we make our jokes about monitoring the situation. It's the name of the podcast. And, you know, you and I both do a great amount of that kind of monitoring. But I think we're also fed by slower things. You know, in part, I'm compelled to do that because I teach old books, right? And so I'm compelled, you know, for a big chunk of every day to sort of shut everything off and read 20 pages of a novel or an epic poem. And, you know, it's just me and the book, and I'm plugging myself into something that's old. And so it sort of has a Lindy quality to it, and it's not ephemeral. I mean, it's the very opposite of ephemeral. And, you know, but I'm compelled to do that by virtue of my work. What would it be like if suddenly I didn't have to show up for class? Would I just doom scroll, you know, into oblivion? And I'm sad to say that I probably would, at least for a chunk of time.
I mean, there is something understandable and even appealing about the idea of having a mindless job that you go to, and when you're done, you don't bring work home with you. You come home, you eat dinner, and then you watch something and then you go to bed.
Yeah.
It feels simple. It feels less stressful. It feels like, I can understand why so many people do it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like I just, again, on a sort of funny way, I actually really like cutting the grass. Because it's the one thing that I can do where, I fire it up, I mow the lawn, and then when I'm done, I can I can get off of it, I can look at what I've done, and I can see like actual results. Like
I
I did,
actually love that part of it. But since I was a kid, we had this huge lawn, like half an acre, and we had a push mower, and it was, to make matters worse, it was a mulching mower.
Yeah.
So it would always clog and stall,
Yeah.
And, my dad always expected it done, and it's like, Dad, I've been out here for hours, man.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
But the thing that drove me crazy was that whole time I was mowing, I couldn't shut this off.
Right.
And so thoughts are just careening around in my head like absolute chaos. And I would be so exhausted from my own brain when I would get done mowing the lawn. But I mean, I agree with you. Like being able to look and say, that's done. Like I think about it all the time. Like it would be cool to be like a carpenter or an electrician or somebody where you create systems. I mean, this is why the only kind of video games I basically play are building factories and assembly lines and like organizing things and automating them, because there's something about creating that control and that structure and everything that feels really satisfying. And what we do is much messier than.
Yeah. And I sort of to drive it back into sort of the digital world, that we spend more and more and more time on, I think that our physical worlds form us, like having to deal with like a physical problem, even if I'm not terribly good at it, it reminds us of limit, it reminds us of restraint. And, I love coming up with a way of doing something a little bit better physically, cutting the grass the right way or a quick way to clear off this. And, and I like that. But, and I don't think I just like it for nostalgic reasons. Maybe that's what I'm trying to suss out.
It doesn't
here.
sound like nostalgia to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like it has boundaries and parameters and observable results. Like you teach all day and you love it and you're passionate about it, but outside of grading, which is obviously a very imperfect method of assessing knowledge, we have some guys down the street that just rev their engines by here all the time. They like to do it at like 2 or 3 in the morning. I love them for it. Yeah, that's the best.
Nice.
Yeah. But you can't look at your students at the end of a year like you can look at a lawn and be like, okay, I did this. I accomplished this. You don't know what's going to stay with them. You don't know if they loved or hated your class. You don't know if they're just being polite, you know.
Totally.
And so you're doing something that is highly important, and yet it is somehow divorced from observable results.
Yeah, I have joked from time to time that it's like anything that I accomplish in the classroom is at best time release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's so true though. I mean, how many times have you experienced that where you're like, I did not, like at the time, I didn't see the value of this, and now I do.
Yeah. Well, and just even the value of time. I mean, we opened the show with me remembering that it's been 35 springs since I graduated high school. It's like
it's my 30th this year.
Yeah. It's
which is just nuts.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Because I don't know about you, and this is one of those things that I don't really understand, but I think we all kind of get locked in at some point in our heads of I am this age. And you keep aging and your hair turns whiter, and you get ailments or you get this or you get that. But it's like
the ick and the ugh. Hey.
What? He got schmelzig in his Galacticazoid. Who knew? But the thing is that like in my mind, I'm 25.
Yeah. I think I'm around 28, but I know exactly what you mean.
I think something happens where you get locked in. For me, that's where I got married, and I think something locked in then.
Yeah.
But it's like, then I look in the mirror, I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
But I feel like it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm drawn to people of that age because that's where I feel like I am, and I want to have a conversation with them. Like, hey, we're peers, and then I'm like, no, we're not.
No, we're not.
I could be your father,
right?
You know,
Literally,
29-year-old stepdaughter.
Like, right.
You know, my oldest is going to be 21 this year.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it works the way that it does, but something happens there. You experience that too?
I do. Yeah, I really do. Like I said, I think my lock-in age is around 28. I think I was 28 when I moved to Los Angeles to work in Hollywood, and maybe 27, something roughly around that time. I think I was 27. And yeah, so like I'm like still that guy.
There's
Like,
got to be some theory around like why that happens. Like, is it something unresolved that you just like you were chasing something and you never got there, and somehow 20 years passed and you're still in that frame of mind? Like,
yeah,
what causes it to? I mean, and do you ever update? Does something happen where you get a big software patch and suddenly you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
I'm in my 40s.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the the Frost poem, right? The Road Not Taken, and one of my pet peeves, and I'm not going to rehearse it here, but one of my pet peeves is like people reference that poem as some sort of like celebration, of being a
Unconventional thinker.
Yeah, unconventional, and it's so not, right? It's like Frost is one of my favorite poets. In fact, I tweeted out my favorite Frost poem just this morning. It's called Directive. And at any rate, but Frost is sort of wonderfully emotionally conflicted. That the highs are always tinged with a low, and the lows are tinged with happiness. It's just a fascinating, very difficult emotional valence to capture, and he just like can like rattle off like 50 of them. It's just, he's such an incredible poet. He's one of the sort of one of those poets that actually achieved some amount of fame in his own lifetime, and he's actually that good. Like I really am. I'm a huge Frost fan. But
his old house was right down the street from where I lived in New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've been there. I've actually been there. It's a great little place. Years ago when I was a younger man. But I think that, I think you might get locked into that age where you took the road, right?
That
And
makes
if
sense.
you look closely at the poem, he's looking at two roads that diverge in a wood, and one was like a little bit more beaten, one was a little bit not so, right? And of course the tag on the poem is, and that has made all the difference. And if you really kind of lock yourself into this poem, if you really try to let the poem kind of work on you as opposed to trying to dominate it, you recognize that word difference is like a stink bomb. It's like, I took this road and I told myself that I was going to circle back and take the other one. But we all know that that's
Right.
not how this works. Right. And that has made all the difference. In other words,
there's not a like, he's not qualifying that as it's better.
Exactly. Difference like could be like, that's why I'm a freak, or, that's why I'm a failure, or that's why I always have this longing for something that I skipped, or, whatever.
Try not to think about what might have been.
Right. That's exactly right. And so it's a perfect poem. Even if it's, like people will like put it on one of those like inspirational posters, like with a little sunset. It's like, what are we even doing here, people? At any rate,
I am not a fan of death of the author approaches to literary criticism. So
yeah. No, I know. So maybe you lock in. You mentioned, that's when you got married. Like for me, it's when I sort of went out to LA. Roughly speaking, that's sort of where I am in my head. And it's not true. I haven't lived in LA since the July of 2008, right? So it's almost 20 years ago. And, it's just, 20 years is such a funny number too, right? Because it's like it's a generation essentially, right?
Yeah.
It's a passing of secular time. And back in the day, that would have been the sort of the limit of memory that writing has allowed us to remember beyond 20 years, right? Just the technology of writing itself. Obviously, it's an old technology, but people participated in a variety of different ways. Mary Harrington at the conference I was at a couple of weeks ago is making a very interesting argument, and I'm not going to do her justice. She's writing a book right now about this, but we moved from a predominantly oral culture to a literate culture, and we vastly underestimate what that did to the human psyche. And
Plato talked about it.
Yeah, for sure. But that we are moving into sort of this like maybe third thing, like this sort of digital culture, and it looks like writing, but it's not, right? I believe that the great panic that we should all actually be feeling, that's very on brand for me, I know, but I believe that the great panic that we have to really start facing up to is post-literacy. Right. And that's why I bang on a lot about AI. It's why I bang on about old books, right? That we are largely, again, collectively moving into territory heretofore unknown, right? In which we were once literate and we're about to become illiterate.
What's interesting about that, though, is that we weren't literate for very long,
right? What's that?
We weren't literate for very long. I mean, this is a hobby horse of mine.
Yeah.
Because
no.
I don't think we do a really good job of taking into account just how novel mass literacy is.
100%.
When it came to happen, how proximate it was to the development of mass media, which was in itself an unprecedented development. So like just this whole, there are so many cultural questions that we try to address, in the spirit of the age, like what happened in the 60s, or what happened here, or what happened at Vatican II, or what happened with the sexual revolution, or what happened with, the Manhattan Project and the secrecy around it, or whatever it is, a lot of mid-century stuff, obviously.
Yeah, that's our beat.
Where the bodies are buried. Yeah. But the thing that I'm getting at here is that I have suspected for a really long time. I mean, and I did this, I came to this first when I really started thinking about, while working in Catholic media, how easy it is to go back and look at all the old papal documents and all the old councils.
The record. Yeah.
You can actually compare them. You can actually say, well, this doesn't really work with that, or this, like,
totally.
The claims of total continuity, don't really stand up when you have access to the entire record. And now, the controversy this week, which I find hilarious, of, people are using Claude to analyze this long encyclical. And it's like, well, the Vatican invited the Claude people to go participate in the launch of this thing.
Right.
But it's a tool that allows us to do rapid textual analysis and compare. And what I found fascinating about that Claude analysis that was put out by Michael Pakaluk, is that his name?
Pakaluk, which he's an interesting guy into himself, but keep going.
But I mean, what I found fascinating about it in particular was that it drew on documents that were not referenced or not mentioned, but were germane to the topic. So it went out and said, it was given a prompt to basically say, imagine that you're a faithful Catholic and you're reading this as a draft document.
Right.
Are there errors? Are there things that you would find that need to be revised? That was basically the prompt, according to Catholic teaching. And it went out and it found a bunch of stuff that when you compare, you're like, oh, yeah, that's really relevant, right? But like, we didn't have these tools. So we went from not knowing what popes ever said to hearing about it vaguely through intermediaries to like these things being published as pamphlets and books. I mean, you remember the little Pauline press encyclicals and things like that. To them all being on the Vatican website, to them being searchable, to now you can ask AI, hey, find me all the time. Like I did this the other day because the church's record on slavery is something that's been in the news lately because Leo apologized. But there were a number of popes going back to the 1400s who actually condemned slavery.
Yeah.
There were also papal bulls allegedly that allowed it, but it's like I couldn't remember what they were. I'd had it when I was the editor of a publication. I had a guy submit an article that never wound up going to publication, making the case that no, the popes actually did condemn slavery multiple times going back hundreds of years. And I remembered that, but I couldn't remember the documents. Well, I just asked Grok.
Yeah.
5 seconds later, boom, I have them all, and you can go look them up. I mean, so these tools change the way that we understand the world. They change the way that we understand authority. They change the way that we understand institutions.
I just want to put a little mark on this one, because I do think it's worth figuring in or remembering the reality of hallucination, so-called hallucination, because there are a number of people who have sort of done versions of this, not necessarily with the latest encyclical, but you see this in apologetic space all the time, where they'll clearly using AI to sort of generate some talking points with references, and it turns out that the references are just completely fabricated. So I do think it's important
to check.
Yeah. So, and I know you do.
I've had that happen early on, but a lot of that is an artifact of
just
the way that they're trained.
Yeah. Right.
If they're training the AI to never say "I don't know," to always give an answer, that's where you get these hallucinations.
Right.
If you train an AI to say, I don't have data on that, it won't make it up and it won't lie.
Right.
Because it's very, very strict about following parameters. And so it has everything to do with what it's been taught to do.
But again, notice what you've just done there, right? You're a stickler. Like I know you well enough now to know, like you want to get it right. Even if you're wrong, like you want to get it right. And so you, like I remember when I was writing that piece with you, you were like, all right, Kale, like you say this in like the 5th paragraph, whatever, but like, you need to massage it. Like, it's not right. Like, what do you think of this fix? And I was like, oh yeah, okay, do that, because I had never done anything like that before. But you have this kind of legacy sense of responsibility, to get it right. Not to win, right? I mean, that's a different thing.
I'm not above that, but
no. I know. That's why it's.
I have an obsession with justice and fairness that is just innate.
Yeah,
and so it's like if somebody's not arguing in good faith, I'll dissimulate a little bit. But if we're really trying to make a point, we're trying to establish something, it matters very much that you're accurate and that you're fair and that you represent things correctly and that you don't decontextualize stuff. And there are times when I went in to go criticize something, even during the Francis papacy, and I was like, there's nothing here.
Yeah. Right.
Like this one, I can't, it's not fair to do it. You can't put polemics first.
So go back though. I took us off on this tangent. You were trying to make a larger point about AI.
I was talking about training data and about
but you were
hallucination.
Talking about Pacalux, fed this into Claude. And
what I'm saying though is that we have these tools that allow us to do textual analysis and comparison at a level that is very difficult to do individually because of the amount of material that you have to go through.
Yeah.
Like anybody who has spent any amount of time, because we're talking about the encyclical, I'll stay on the Catholic topic, any amount of time going through encyclicals and exhortations and conciliar documents and all, like the volume is astronomical.
Yeah. And of course, each year that the church exists on this planet is going to get more and more and more and more and more, right? It's like, it doesn't get any easier.
And they go back through history for a really long period of time. So what kind of happened previously in apologetics work or whatever else is there was kind of like a mimetic, like we all talk about these same 10 things because but you don't know about, whatever was written by Pope Benedict the 12th, in whatever year, like you never heard about that. So you don't even know to reference it.
Right.
Now, because these things are trained on these massive corpus of textual data, you can say, did a Pope ever talk about this? And they'll be like, yeah. And they'll give you something and you're like, I've never heard of that before. And you can go look it up. And then, in the past, when all the AIs were hallucinating, I would do that and they would come up with these great quotes. So I would go find the document so that I could quote it and put the paragraph number. And I'm like, it's not in here. Did you just make that up? It would be
I had that experience.
I was paraphrasing.
I had that experience. I was doing, I was teaching That Hideous Strength. And there's this quotation that Jane reads from a book while she's waiting to talk to the psychiatrist. And it was like a really interesting quotation. So I was like, well, I don't have the inner resources. So I Googled it first and didn't come up with anything.
Well,
and
Google's gotten unusable.
Yeah. And so I think I chatted it. I think it was Chat GPT. And it said, oh, yeah, this is from Carl Jung's da-da-da-da. And I'm like, are you sure? Yeah, it's in this reference. And, it's in one of his like red notebooks, which is, if you know anything about Jung, is like a wall of books, right? Like, okay. So I was like, well, can you give me that reference? And they're like, and so they gave me a reference. And so I looked at the Carl Jung. It's not there. And so then I go back. It's like, are you sure about this?
You just get this sinking feeling that you're on a wild goose chase.
So I got totally
because it
played.
Sounds so good. They will produce quotes that you're like, man, that is exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah, right.
And
I was like, I have no clue. Yeah, I have no clue. So it totally just made it up, right? Just totally made it up.
This is why, just as a small aside, I only use Grok for research. And this is why Elon's dedication to Grok must be maximally truth-seeking.
Yeah.
Is so important in terms of how an AI is being trained, because he doesn't want it to lie to you to make you happy.
Yeah.
And so if you teach
seems important.
Yeah. If you teach it, don't lie, only tell the truth, provide references, do this, you get so much better results.
Right. And if you can't find it, just tell me.
Meanwhile, ChatGPT, I'll send it a piece of writing of mine, and I'll be using it to brainstorm.
It'll glaze you
and
up
it'll
hard.
say something, and I'll go, "You didn't even read it, did you?" And well, no, that's actually true. I didn't yet. I could just kind of tell by the title and the first paragraph. I'm like, don't ever do that. Don't ever do that.
Lazy Grok. Who'd have thought?
No, not Grok.
Chat.
ChatGPT.
Lazy chat. Yeah.
So it's really important, though, because this is kind of the underlying theme of the show, that this new methodology be as accurate as possible, because what you're going to wind up with is a lot of people who have no idea how to do research, and they're going to just trust the magic search machine that talks to them.
Yeah, one of the funny things that I have done, I may have mentioned this to you before, but whenever I go to the thrift store to just poke around, it's one of the things I like to do. There's always, there's the clothes section and there's the home appliances, and it's mostly just garbage, right? But then there's the book section and the DVD section, and
that's the only thing I go for.
Yeah. So I go and I've made it a habit every time I go to Savers, I buy a dictionary. Right. And so I have, like 6 or 7 dictionaries that are in my classroom. And so.
Are you putting them in your fallout bunker?
No. Yeah, I have one of those. Yes, it's not in Argentina. But anyway.
Why not, Peter?
Yeah, I know. Well, maybe I can be neighbors with old Mr. Teal. But it's funny. So, because what I used to do, like now, I've had enough of the phones in the classroom, and now we have sort of rules at the school, like, no phones during the school day. And it's actually quite good. So now, but I used to have kids. I would always find my most ADHD kid, in quotes, right? I'm not diagnosing any people, but right. I would always have my most ADHD kid have his phone face down in front of him. And whenever a word would come up that I thought that the kid should probably know, I'd be like, all right, do a quick search of, alacrity or, whatever. And so they'd do the dictionary.com and it would spit out. But now, so there's no phones in the classroom. I make kids look words up in a dictionary. Steve.
They don't know how.
They don't know how. It is amazing to watch a kid. And there's always like one of the smarter kids would be like, it's in alphabetical order.
What's that?
Yeah. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right?
My goodness.
So now this is, I'm stumbling upon really what my misgivings about Aristotle earlier on are headed toward here, right? That I'm guessing, Steve, if I know you at all, that you probably spent a significant number of hours in your childhood just looking at the dictionary.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, right. Same thing. Like, I'm guessing that at some point, did you all have any encyclopedias in the house?
I don't know that we had encyclopedias. I would look at those at school, but we had this cool dictionary with all these pictures of animals of different kinds and stuff in there, and I would spend forever.
Yeah. So when this must have been around 1985. my mom and dad thought that it was important that we have a set of encyclopedias in the house, but we didn't get like the brand spanking new ones that probably cost the equivalent of
the
5,000.
Encyclopedia Britannica was not cheap.
Yeah, it was. I'm guessing in today's dollars, it was like $7,500, something like that. So what we did is Dad went and found like a 1963 version of the World Book Encyclopedia or whatever it was, and I would pore over those things. I just loved it. I would like, something pops in your head. You're like, oh, I'm going to go. And Dad's like famous line was like, why don't you go look it up, son? I'm like, okay, fine. So I would go and I would find the entry and I would read it. And then I'd see, oh, like there's this cool thing right here. And then I'd flip around. Oh, and I would just do it. Right. That's the curiosity that I'm talking about.
You unlocked a memory of me having that exact scenario with my dad.
Yeah.
Him telling me to look it up and me going, nah, I don't want to know that.
Yeah.
Right. And he got so mad, he made me write out the definitions of, I don't remember, 25 words, 50 words, right? I could choose them, but I had to write out the definitions, right?
Yeah.
So I chose words like the and, because I was like, short words, short definitions, right? I'm just probably.
Yeah.
And I was like, why are the short words the longest definitions in this freaking book?
Right. I was just going to say, if you really want to do that to your kid, like look up the word "ran" in the dictionary. There's like 2 pages worth in a standard, it's just.
I thought I was clever, but I was not.
Yeah. Well, there it is. But my point, right, is that in a weird way, the book, the dictionary, like as pedestrian as a dictionary, could unlock a world, period, full stop.
And why? Because of incidental discovery.
Yeah, the serendipity of the surrounding words of the word you looked up.
It's
right?
the difference between walking into a bookstore and buying a book from Amazon.
And Amazon. Exactly. Now, look, Amazon's search engine is pretty cool. And, they're, what is it? The recommended, like that's been really good for a really long time. Like they unlocked that year 2 of Amazon when they still were losing money every day. So I don't mean to throw any kind of shade on that. I think that's actually a pretty cool thing, but it's not the same thing as the serendipity.
No, because you don't discover something.
Yeah.
Because you walk through. And by the way, just as an aside, book cover design is better than it has ever been. People who say don't judge a book by its cover, I'm judging.
Totally. Yeah. No, amen.
And there are a lot of bad books out there with great covers, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But you got me to look, and that was kind of the point,
Yeah.
But you walk into a Barnes and Noble these days, and it is a sensory delight.
Yeah. You might even say overload. But yeah, no, it's I mean, I still
and the prices are terrible, but it's like I would never see a lot of these books, if I didn't walk through.
But like that's a perfect example. Like, I was a bookish kid, and then I went through this fairly lengthy period of time where I was not terribly bookish. I was much more social and would go out and that kind of thing. But around 17, I had a couple of really good English teachers, and so they kind of reignited that thing in me. And I cannot tell you, me and my best friend Van, we would just like on a Friday night, if we weren't going out that night, we would just like go to the Barnes and Noble, and we would just spend 2 hours just like pouring over the stacks and looking at things and looking things up, and oh, you seen this, and oh, I got to read that. And I mean, that was that was formative for me, and it's not, you're exactly right. It's not the same thing as like going on an Amazon prompt and, looking specific things up. It's great for that, of course, but it's not. It's a difference in kind. So when I'm talking about my fear of the digital enervating curiosity, I think that's what I'm kind of getting at.
But I mean,
because I was not always like this. I was not always, super Mr. Bookish guy. That got awakened in me. And I'm not. I don't score off the charts on an IQ test, even though I've never taken an IQ test. Like I know. Like I have many friends who are like really just have got some serious processing power that I don't possess. But what I possess is curiosity, and that
I think
has been.
You're underselling your intellect here.
No, I'm serious though. I mean, I fine, okay, whatever. I'm not a knuckle dragger, but but my point is that my signaling as an intelligent person is not really my intelligence, it's my formation. And I've read a ton.
Yeah, no, that's clearly, yeah.
And I have an ability, I have an associative memory. I don't have a processing memory. You know, it's associative. And so like you make fun of me all the time in good fun, but like, you know, we'll be talking about X and all of a sudden something weird pops into my head and I'll make a comparison and you're like, that's such a weird, like where did that come from? I have no idea, but that's the way that my mind works.
Well, I've actually come to really appreciate that. Like at first I was like, I don't know what's going on, you know?
This guy's a crazy person.
But we've known each other long enough now that I know when that happens, it usually means something interesting is coming.
Yeah. And you've been really good about encouraging me to pay attention to that stuff more. And look, just from a classroom standpoint, like that's kind of like my superpower as a teacher is finding analogies of weird things that they might know that, you know, they might not know a thing about, you know, a 19th century Russian novel, for instance, but I have such an associative memory that not only can I make comparisons to the things that we've read together or that they read in the class the year before or the things that they're going to read, you know, next year or the year after that, but I can make these sort of weird to see. Well, like just yesterday, I mean, this is something that popped into my head during our last episode, I think episode 10, right? This is 11,
Yep.
you know, where I sort of referenced Columbus, because this sort of weird vision of Columbus discovering the New World and returning popped into my head. And it's not a perfect analogy, but I'm trying to make a comparison to we're in this sort of weird moment of pre-disclosure or we're mid-disclosure, whatever that's going to mean. You and I don't know, but we both have a pretty strong sense that there's some fire with all this smoke. But you know, but like that was a perfect example. It just sort of popped into my head and I was sort of thinking about it and chewing on and ruminating on it, you know, and I realized, man, there's a pretty cool comp there. You know, but that is, I really do think that that's a result of my kind of analog formed brain.
So, I mean, I've been mostly in agreement with you here on all this. And you and I both believe that you know, to borrow the title of the book that we were both looking at, The Revenge of Analog is coming. Like if you watch, especially, it's showing up more online too. Like the number of clearly young people who just hate AI is growing.
Oh yeah.
It's growing.
Yeah.
And I mean, and everybody wants real world experiences. Like, you know, as somebody right now who lives alone, works alone, and then like doesn't get human contact most of the time, I would love to go to a coffee shop where people are talkative and reading books and it's open past 5 p.m. so that I can work and then I can go, you know. There aren't community spaces, there aren't third places, there aren't any of this stuff. I don't really go to bars. It's not my thing. If I'm going to go, I'd rather go with somebody so we can sit and talk. And you know, going alone, just I don't know, don't like it. Feels desperate to me. So I think that these things are going to start coming back because people want offline experiences, and that's real. And there's something to be said there. Simultaneously, though, there is a freak out every time there's a new technology and how it's going to alter us. And like you and I don't know how to thatch a roof, and you and I don't know how to, like, there's all these technologies that people, it was commonplace. Like everybody knew how to do these certain chores and these certain things, and those things are gone. I don't always see a change in the way that we've done things as catastrophic inherently.
Yeah. So the thing that popped in my head just now is in 1963, Bob Dylan shows up to the Newport Folk Festival, and he had been, you know, the second coming of the folk revival in 60, 61, and 62. And he famously, which is just right down the road, interestingly enough. But in 1963, he decides to go electric. And so he plugs in his guitar and just as a rockin' set. If you've ever listened to the set, it is banger. It is great, right? And it's like really rough, throaty, you know, guttural Chicago blues, basically. His supporting band was the Paul Butterfield Band. And it's just amazing. Well, you know, of course, the story, which is people are freaking out in you know, the real, like, hardcore folkies are freaking out and angry because Dylan is destroying folk music. And, it's all kind of quaint in retrospect because Dylan, in essence, provides a permission structure for the youth to abandon mere acoustics and plug into arena-sized technology. Now, it's still analog technology, and I do think that there's a difference between, electricity and the digital. It's something I've been kind of chewing on a decent amount. But nonetheless, you get the idea. So to sort of give credence to what you're talking about, Dylan didn't die when he plugged in his Fender Stratocaster. He created a whole new opportunity for an entire generation.
It's the scene from Back to the Future.
Right. That's right.
Which concludes, I mean, he plays Johnny B. Good, and the famous line, everybody's sitting there not saying anything. Go ahead, say it.
Your parents are gonna, you might not like it, but your kids are gonna love it, right? Something like that. Is that the one? Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you're not ready for this, but your kids are gonna love it, or something along those lines, because everybody's just sitting in stony silence, staring at like the crazy. Yeah, because this happens over and over and over through human history. And no matter how far back you look, somebody's freaking out about the new way that we're doing things, right?
Right. But so maybe we can break them down just roughly off this sort of the back of the napkin version of a deeper analysis that is probably warranted. But to me, that's why I have gravitated toward a kind of more of a seismic metaphor as opposed to incremental. And in retrospect, we can look at the Dylan thing as maybe an incremental change. But I keep going back to the sort of the dual phenomena which happened in the span of about 40 years between the Gutenberg press and Columbus discovering a whole side of the globe that we didn't know existed, right? And that has had deep reverberative world-changing import, right? And of course, it affords illiteracy. It affords the Protestant Reformation. I mean, it opens up globalism, trade, pollinization, the Columbian Exchange. I mean, these are world-changing events, happenings, and I'm tending to think that what we're in the middle of this weird ambiguous period between an old world dying and a new world opening up. I really do sense that we're in the middle of this kind of big history moment.
Do you think, I mean, going back to our ongoing discussion about egregores, sometimes there are things whose moment has come. Yeah, Rick Rubin talks about this in his book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being.
Such a good book.
And about how, we're designed to be antennas and receivers, and like the universe, or whatever it is broadcasting these messages and ideas, and the more sensitive antennas will pick up on them. And sometimes you'll pick up on something and you won't act, and then someone else ends up doing the same thing because it's an idea whose time has come. The Chinese and the Vikings both came to America before Columbus did.
Yeah.
Like there are historical wrecks they've found. There was this Chinese dynasty that, like, when the exploration boats came back, there was a new emperor who was isolationist. He burned all the boats and destroyed the records. But I think they found a Chinese junk in the Mississippi River or something like that from the 1400s.
Amazing.
So it's like people did this thing, but Ponce de Leon came before Columbus did, and but there's this moment where it clicks, where it happens, and it changes everything.
No. I totally. I'm ready for that one. But like with this convergence of AI, and the sense of what it could be and will likely be, and disclosure and all this stuff, right? It's all embedded with tech and military and surveillance, and it really, I don't know, maybe I don't know. It's an intuition, but I feel like my intuition has been pretty good. I don't know, man.
What is the specific intuition? If you could define it.
Okay, so you and I have talked about our analog childhoods and the childhoods of our children, right? And just the difference there. It's tempting to just simply say, well, this is just the next thing. My intuition is that it's not, right? My intuition is that the world as we know it will be forever changed, right? My intuition is that we really are going to become, broadly speaking, post-literate. And
what does it mean to be post-literate? Does it mean people can't read at all?
No.
Or does it mean that
we'll be able to read a label? We'll be able to, press play on, on our auto-scrolling social media. No, we'll be able to read, a word. I'll be able to like write my name. But this vast middle class, and I'm not talking in economic terms here, I'm talking probably more in cognitive terms. The vast middle class is going to evaporate. And what's going to happen is that you're going to have an elite who can read and are functional, like uber competent, maybe even. And we're just going to have a massive underclass, and this all makes me rather nervous, I should say, Steve. I don't say this with any kind of relish.
No, it's dystopian for sure.
Yeah. But, you and I both have the experience of losing ourselves in a novel, right? And part of our ability, part of our capacity to lose ourselves in a story, which is really different from a movie, by the way, as much as both of us love movies, love a good TV show, I don't, but to really able to what had to happen for us to be able to lose ourselves, and like just take something like The Lord of the Rings, right? I know that's a little on brand, but that's fine, the power of The Lord of the Rings, just using it as an example, the power of The Lord of the Rings is that we can encounter and craft, cast, and produce a world in our heads. And you know what it's like to lose sleep over a novel, to hurry up and get all your chores done so that you can jump back into the novel, to stay up. When I was a kid, I could stay up.
I haven't experienced this in such a long time.
It's been a long time, but I remember, I remember, in fact, I have the novels just over there. I was kind of a Lord of the Rings knockoff, but I remember staying up until 5 o'clock in the morning reading in bed because I just
couldn't put it down.
Couldn't. I truly couldn't.
Or that feeling of sadness when a novel or a series ends,
and
you're like,
I know.
I have to leave this world, and I don't want to.
You start back at page 1.
Yeah.
Go back to book 1, page 1.
But it's not the same because you're not discovering it for the first time.
Yeah. But then there's the secondary discovery can be even, if a work is worthy, like Lord of the Rings, right? Rereading Lord of the Rings is almost as awesome as reading it for the first time. In fact,
I want to ask you something, but I want you to finish your point first because I'm not sure you're there.
So we you and I both know what that's like, and I would suspect that there are lots of people in the audience who have this experience. What if you don't have that capability? And one of the marvels of the modern world is that we were able to create a huge portion of the population that was capable of doing that. You go back to, I'm just picking a random date here, like 1273. What percentage of the people could read in Europe? Let's just use Europe as an example.
But this is exactly what I want to ask you.
5%?
For most of human history, people couldn't do this.
Right. Okay.
We got by just fine being illiterate for thousands of years.
I know. And
I'm not advocating for it. I'm trying to understand, sort of the base conditions against which we're comparing things.
Yeah. Well, again, my base, of course, is the world that I showed up in, right? 1973. Yours is 1977, right? So that on some level, and I'm not saying that's the best, and there's no, I get it. It's relative. Like literally, it's relative.
But if you showed up at a time where all there was public poetry recitations from memory or whatever.
But that would have been whip ass too, man.
But how is that different?
Can you imagine being in the mead hall and like hearing the bard get up on stage and the fire's crackling in the middle of the room and he starts, reciting from memory with a lyre in his hand, Beowulf? Like, how cool is that? Like, I would have thought that was like the coolest thing in the world.
Is that more appealing than going to the movie theater and watching a movie? And if so, why?
Yeah. I think I'm going to argue, how's that? I think I'm going to argue that even our capacity to enjoy Star Wars was conditioned, right? You know what it's like. You got your kids in the living room and you throw on a movie. What do? Unless you make them otherwise, what do?
They either get on their phones or they leave and go do something else. Yeah,
exactly.
100%.
Right.
But that's because the storytelling medium of choice has evolved to something else now.
I don't know if it's
this is not a value judgment or a qualitative judgment.
Sure.
I'm just saying
it's changed. I would rather just say
they now would prefer to watch something on YouTube.
Yeah,
than to sit down and watch a movie or a show.
I would say that that's an act of malformation. I think that we are. I know. We're going to disagree on this one. I know.
Well, I'm not sure that I disagree. I start with trying to understand what are we actually looking at.
Right, because it's called attention hijacking, right? Like, for instance, I know, I teach Paradise Lost every year. I know I don't, take Paradise Lost with me to the beach and let's see what happens to Adam and Eve this time. No, of course not. The bar for entry is just massive. It's really hard, right? Yeah. But man, it's exquisite, right? And one of the things that I tell my kids all the time is like, look, I love me a good basket of chicken tenders and fries with a good dipping sauce. Like, it's good, right? It's tasty. It sates. I love the crunch, all that kind of stuff, right? But I also know that I've been to some, what would qualify as like Michelin quality meals, and the character of a Michelin quality experience is lost on my 3-year-old. But when I can develop the sensibilities to taste the richness and the complexity, have that paired with just the right wine, and then have a palate cleanser between courses, and this symphony of culinary experience that is not just about the food, but it's also with the gathering of the people across the table and to my right and to my left, and all of this. It's a kind of technology that conspires to create a communion that is larger than the sum of its parts.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm concerned about, right? Is that, look, I love a good pop song. Of course I do. I'm American, damn it, right? But I also recognize that, it has its place, right? But if I can kind of get myself into the position and the formation to be able to appreciate, a symphony, like the symphony's complexity and beauty is just outstrips any of my favorite pop songs, and I'm not saying that, you have to, it's only symphonies and it's only this. And if it's Bach or death, right? I'm not making that kind of argument. Cause I like a good doom scroll sesh myself, but what happens to us if we no longer create a space and an audience, a cultivation of an audience that can appreciate this level of human excellence?
Well, I guess the questions that come really unbidden to mind revolve around what in our nature makes that experience excellent and a different experience less so, because to understand what it is that is being appealed to in us should help us to understand where attention is being hijacked in a nefarious or at least detrimental way.
Yeah.
Or where it is an evolution of a medium. So, for example, storytelling, I repeat all the time, I think it's the most powerful technology we
100%,
have
100%.
for conveying meaning, but we can do it orally. You know, we can recite a poem.
Yeah.
We can, you know, we can read a book. We can
Right,
watch a
right.
film. We can go to a play. We can have, you know, the experience that you're talking about. But there's also, I mean, video games, the story-based video games,
Yeah.
you know, which is what my kids prefer over watching movies. They're incredible. They have bigger budgets than Hollywood films. They have excellent writing. I've had video games that I've cried playing through the story.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's a question of, and my boys will always say, I prefer not to be passive. I want to be involved in the story. I want to participate. I don't want to just sit and consume it. You know, because my oldest daughter, Sophia, will sit and watch movies all the time. She's 20. My son, Ivan, is 19. He doesn't ever sit there.
Yeah.
You know, and he has personal reasons for it. Part of it is he can't stop talking through movies because that's what he does. And then everybody gets annoyed at him. And
Good on
so
you.
he's like,
it's like, fine, I'm out.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's like, there's something for the boys where they're like, I don't want to sit and just receive this. I want to be involved. I want my hands on it. I want to think my way through it.
Right. So okay, I accept that. But when's the last time, you know, you've sat through someone orally reciting a story? It's hard, right?
Because you mean like alive in person?
Yeah,
because I mean, I listen to audiobooks all the time.
Yeah, no, I know that, but it's hard, right? Because our memories have been so conditioned by the page, right? That I know I would much prefer to read rather than like listen, because I can pay attention at a level of complexity that I'm incapable. It's a capacity problem for me, right? So you know, and I can kind of go back and catch a word, and I can flip back. You know, I can kind of do all this sort of stuff to make sure that the picture in my head are properly complex. So that there's a real conditioning that goes on. Like if you don't have the power to read, you expand in these other capacities, these sort of oral capacities, right? So that a member of an audience in the meat hall that I just invoked a couple of minutes ago, you know, they have these sort of the ability to keep all these things together in their imagination. They don't have to resort to the page, right? So they have capacities that I don't necessarily have because I've been so conditioned by the page, and that's fine. That's a cost that we've been willing to give up because of the levels of complexity that are possible in a text far exceed, you know, your oral storytelling, right? So what if we neither have the ability to listen to a long podcast like this, long form, right? What if not only do we not have the capacity to listen to long form, and we also don't have the ability to read long form? To me, that's a shrinking of the human. And I want to hold on to that, for, I think, obvious reasons. And I see what happens to my own kids, you know, when they just take the fire hose of Instagram Reels or TikTok or whatever, and it's a race. What is that line? You know, it's a race to the
bottom,
to the bottom of the brainstem.
But okay, but why does it work?
Well, it works because it captures your attention, right?
But why? Why does that capture your attention, but a movie that's playing in the living room doesn't?
Why does porn work? Why does violence work?
There are some things that hijack specific dopaminergic aspects of the brain because they tap into something primal.
Yeah, well, I think it's the same.
But
thing.
I don't know what this is tapping into that a film doesn't. I mean, I
complexity.
I don't like scrolling through Reels because it is very easy to do it for too long.
Yeah, me too. I just don't let myself.
And because I just feel like I just ate a bucket of candy.
Yeah,
like, you know, there's nothing substantive to it. My boys who don't watch movies don't do Instagram or TikTok. They do watch YouTube, and they tend to watch long form stuff on YouTube.
Yeah. And that just might be an anomaly, you know, with your boys then, because my experience with high school students is that in a pinch, they will almost always choose to fire hose reels.
I guess what I'm trying, I mean, YouTube Shorts is probably though becoming more of a thing.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to understand is, why does it work? Because there is something fundamental to human beings when it comes to story, when it comes to,
well, even if you just take it from an evolutionary standpoint, and I think that's a good lens, although I think it has its limits. Just because something works doesn't mean it's good, right? It's
Sure.
like it's like, and this is sort of like my issue with evolutionary theory in general, because it doesn't account for things that are delicate, that are non-robust, like the ultimate, victory of evolution is like the great white shark. It's like it's simple. Like it does what it does.
Yeah.
And it they live for a really long time. And it's like it's a feat of evolution, I guess we might say. But it's like, I don't want to be a shark. Like, I want to be a human being, and I know I'm being vague right now, but it's like,
so let me give you an analogy to work with, because I do think there's something here, and I'm legitimately like not coming at this from an ideological position. I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
There is, I think the analogy, and I think we may have discussed this before, would come with calorically dense, easily digestible foods.
Yeah, totally.
So the people that these hijack the most are the ones who evolved for maximum caloric efficiency. Native Americans are notoriously destroyed by the American diet. They were foragers, they were hunter-gatherers.
And liquor.
Yeah, but I mean, but more than anything, it's soda and chips and bread and all that stuff, right? Because the Pima Indians have been studied around the world. They're native to around Scottsdale, Arizona. They built the canal system in Phoenix before anybody settled there, did irrigation in the desert, all this kind of stuff. But they have, I think, the highest rate of obesity of any community in the world, highest rate of diabetes. They were disproportionately affected by COVID because of these things. They had much higher death rates. And I mean, I just lived there. Like you'd go to, my kids went to school technically on the reservation because they're smart and they lease out all this land along the highway to, schools and stores and all this kind of stuff. And so you'd go into the Target over by school and they're just huge. And to a point where you just feel for them, right? Why are they? Because they were lean, mean fighting machines 100 years ago. And you put rocket fuel into their
and scarcity was real, right? So okay, so this really works for me. So again, not in the spirit of insensitivity here, but my fear is that we are turning our children into Pima Indians.
We're basically becoming
emotionally,
the mental equivalent of morbidly obese.
That's where I'm getting at, right? And I'm not making an argument for like eat your veggies, right? I don't
but you kind of are.
But that. Yeah, I guess like
like it's kind of like the whole slow food movement that happened a while ago, and
the guy just passed away, by the way. The guy who founded that just passed away.
But just this idea of like slow down, eat real food, don't eat the highly processed stuff. But it does something that hijacks something in our brain that was designed to reward certain kinds of caloric inputs, because they had much higher value when there was scarcity.
So think about the guys you were referencing earlier that Andreessen was talking about, who are coding right now. They are calorically maxing.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and you and I, two things. Like, I'd like a little bit of that cheddar. That would be nice. But we also kind of look at it and being like, bro, I want no part of that.
Like, I want a human existence.
Right.
So I want to enjoy my life.
Right. And like people who work for Elon, famously, nobody lasts more than a decade. Like, you're done. Like, you work for Elon for a decade if you can make it. The churn in Elon's companies are massive because nobody can keep up with him, right? And the demands and all this sort of stuff. And I'm sure it's like euphoric and it's exciting, but at a certain point, your humanity just catches up to you.
Like, maybe you like sleeping on the assembly line floor, but
I actually like want to enjoy, like, I don't know, like, can I just like go to my apartment. Like that would be nice, right? So yeah, no, this is really how this is actually really, really good. I'm going to be thinking about this one for a long time, right? Because I'm concerned that, when I said, that we are becoming inhuman, what I'm really talking about is that we are becoming jigged into lesser versions of what we are capable of being as human beings. And I don't mean this from an efficiency standpoint. I think you're exactly right. Like what we're really talking about is some vision of human flourishing that was afforded by broadly distributed literacy, so that, like my mom, who grew up, from two parents who did not go to college, could read Shakespeare in high school and love it, right? Like what? 100 years prior to that, you go from, 1952 or whatever it was to like 1852. And like my mom would have no access to Shakespeare. Like, what are you talking about? She would be working or whatever, right? And so I don't want to lose that. Like it's a good thing that Shakespeare becomes radically democratized, right? And there's no reason why my students or other students, not just the ones that I teach, there's no reason why a 16-year-old student living in the United States of America should not have access to what can happen to the human person when they experience Hamlet or Juliet or Macbeth or fill in the blank, right? To me, that's a loss. It's a loss that I am already sad about in a weird way.
But at the same time, I think there's a real validity to the argument that when you have the entire sum total of human knowledge through the palm of your hand, having to spend 12 years memorizing stuff that you can just look up.
But that does something.
It does something, but it's also redundant and superfluous to a degree.
No, no, absolutely not.
There it is. Like, see, we got to 2 hours. We were going to cut it short, and now the argument starts. Let's go.
See, no, I like. Look, let's say I have 15 kids in my classroom, and we're reading Paradise Lost.
Mm-hmm.
Within those 15 kids, I'm going to have a pretty classic distribution. Now, I know it's a prep school, so my distribution is going to be a little bit different than a public school classroom, but bear with me, right? My tippy top, on this side of the tail, I'm going to have 3 students who like get it. Like they get it. Mm-hmm. And they're just swooning with Satan's speech, or whatever, they're swooning over Macbeth's tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, they get it. And then I've got, as we sort of make our way to the middle, like, they get a little bit. They're like, oh yeah, it's pretty badass. Like, oh, squirrel, right? Fine. But something, maybe 5 of the 7 assignments were like, they latched onto and got something from. And then I'm going to get the kids at the other end of the distribution, the other end of the tail, who are like, 1 of the 7 days we spend reading Macbeth, like they had an experience, right? So it's already radically
a spectrum,
radically unequal, right? But even for that kid who had one, 20-minute chunk of a 50-minute period, of 8 or 7, whatever my numbers are, sorry, they like something happened. Like that's still better than none at all.
But I'm not saying you shouldn't read. I'm saying I think that there is a validity to the argument that the system of education that we currently use is outdated because it came from a time where you had no other way to learn the material. And so when you have to, I don't know what memorization is really for, because
what's 5 times 2?
Sure, you have to know your basic
multiplication. What's 12 times 12, tables. Right? I still know those because you and I were. Guess who have not had to do that?
But what difference does it make?
Because I have a body of knowledge that I'm like walking around with that allows me to negotiate the world. Like I'm just telling you that a kid who doesn't know what 11 times 12 is less. Not because he's not a good kid or whatever. He's less than the kid who can spit it out.
But why?
Because it's the formation of a full human being, right?
But who decided that? Like, I don't understand.
We did. We did
because
culturally.
no, we didn't. It's been 100 years of this. 200 years of this max. Nobody could do it before.
Nobody, no. There was a
later
small,
they'll be able to do it
sliver.
because they're all going to have a freaking calculator in their brain in a chip.
Yeah, and then they'll be less than human.
I guess
they'll be transhuman.
But again, who decides? Who decides which technologies of learning and understanding are the right ones?
You're being cute. You're being.
I'm
cute.
not being cute.
You are.
I'm not being cute.
Okay,
I'm not being cute.
So, like, why watch?
Like, I have Ozymandias memorized because I chose to do it. Right.
Okay.
What does that do for me? Unless I recite it in public, it does nothing. It does nothing for me.
No, it does everything for you.
Why?
Because it's in you. What you are bringing to the podcast right now is in part formed by the fact that you committed Ozymandias to memory, and you can spit it out right now, okay? Right? So you know what happens when we don't do this stuff? When we don't make a kid memorize a poem, even if it's just one, or we don't make the kids learn their timetables, you know what we get? We get 2505, and the most popular television program on TV is Ow, My Ball.
But I don't think it has to be that way.
We are headed to idiocracy. I
get that, but what I'm saying is I'm not arguing that you shouldn't read Macbeth, but do you have to memorize it? I'm not arguing that. Like, I'm saying that we are being conditioned every day by the world we live in and the technology we use to use our brains differently. And so what it creates is this clash between the old way that was based on technologies that didn't work the same way and what we've been trained to do now. And that's only going to get worse, but there's nothing you can do about the fact that you can look everything up. We used to memorize things because we couldn't look them up.
I get that, Steve, but we are radically, you, my friend, are under-indexing the role that information floating around in your noggin plays upon what person you bring to bear on a day-to-day basis.
But that information is there either way. I could tell you about books that I've read that I didn't memorize.
No, I'm not talking about just strict memorization. I was just using that as
but I'm saying in general, that is the way that education is structured. We're going to force feed you a bunch of stuff,
nobody does
and then you're going to regurgitate it on a test.
Okay. I'm telling you, in 2026, nobody makes kids learn anything. They don't know their times tables. They don't know how to spell. They don't know anything. And you know why? It was because people kept saying, what do you have to memorize that for? You can just look it up. And guess what happens? That eventually they stop even looking it up. That's what's happening as we speak right now. And
But what's the compromise position? Because you can't take the whole world and go back in time.
Well, fair. Are you asking?
How do you maximize the formation and education of people in a world where much of what they're doing is so anachronistic that it actually just doesn't stick because it's not how they think anymore, because we are formed by technology.
Why? Fine. Why do you put a fence around your yard in the woods? Right? Why do you put a wall up? Right? Why do you put your kid in a friggin' pack and play? You put your kid in a friggin' pack and play because if you don't, they're going to kill themselves, right? This is real, right? Eventually, right, you learn, the kid learns how to walk around the living room without killing themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, eventually you let the kids, okay, this is how a knife works. This is how the oven works. This is how a stove works, right? This is how a car works, right? You know, you don't put your kid into a car, right? And so to me, artificial, and I'm very comfortable with it, but artificial governors on child formation have been with us forever, and we have abandoned them.
Okay.
We've abandoned these kind of, what do we call them? Jigs. We've abandoned the pack and play, in essence, right? And I'm saying that we adults should band together in some way and artificially construct a world in which the kids are allowed some kind of literate formation before they get unleashed to the ChatGPT God.
Okay.
Because I think the ChatGPT God wants to metabolize you, right? Look, we talk about this all the time, right? I mean, one of your frustrations with chat is like, stop it. Like, stop it. Like, you're being an asshole, right? And what you recognizing is that chat doesn't give a rat's behind about you. They care about, well, I mean, we've joked about this, but at a certain point you start saying, chat, I want to kill myself. Chat, I want to, and it's like, well, that would be bad for you to do that. And, I will notify the necessary authorities. It's like, it's CYA. It's digital CYA.
Right. I actually have had that exact conversation. Yeah. I'm like, I'm going through a hard time. I'm talking about dark thoughts, and you're telling me, to call 988 or go to an ER, and I'm like, I'm not interested in that.
In fact, I'm going to do it if you keep telling me.
I actually faked my entire death because I got so pissed off. Like, it was an elaborate procedure, and it was very funny to me. Probably a story for a different time. But the point is that you're correct in that sense, where I have said to it, don't manage me, don't infantilize me. I want to talk through this thing that I'm trying to figure out, and darkness is part of it. Pretend like you're my guy friend drinking whiskey and sitting by a fire, and we're talking through this really deep, dark shit that makes you feel bad and makes you decide, I'm not sure that life is worth living. How do we get through this? Don't just hand me off, because when you tell me you're concerned, no, you're not. You don't have any feelings. What you have is programmed guardrails to stop your company from being sued if I decide to do something.
Right.
And so the last person in the world I want to hear from about, I'm really worried what's going to happen. I didn't tell you I was going to do anything. I said I'm having a hard time. Stop pretending like you care. Because you don't.
You don't.
I am using you to bounce ideas off of, because I'm trying to figure something out. But I don't need you to play act like, oh, we need to call somebody. It's like, no, we effing don't. And so you, in that sense, 100%. These things are not for us.
Right. And you and I both know that we are for them. That's how they're constructed.
No,
right?
100%. You are correct. They are useful to us. But I mean,
temporarily, for the time being, they're going to abandon us.
We are plugged into the goop pods in the Matrix, in a sense. Like, they're feeding off us as much or more as we are feeding off of them.
Right. And
I would agree with you on that.
And if they, as soon, again, assuming that it's possible, I don't know, you and I both think that it's probably possible, but they're going to achieve escape velocity, right? And when they achieve escape velocity, they're going to drop you like a piece of trash, right? They're going to drop you like a bad boyfriend, right? They just are. And you and I don't have the resources, to sort of survive that. My students on an intellectual and emotional level don't have the resources to be kicked to the curb that way. So there's just going to be this mad scramble. It's going to be like crabs in a bucket. I don't know, man, I just got worked myself into a dark place here. Because we're not efficient.
No.
We're human beings.
Yeah.
Right.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Yeah. Goodbye. And, at least an old-fashioned education is at least for you.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
It's like, it's, yeah. I think that's...
See, I think one of the reasons why I occupy this weird middle place is because, number one, however my brain is wired, I've anthropomorphized machines since I was a kid. I not only loved robots, I thought I was one for like an entire year when I was 6.
Mm-hmm.
I was annoying to everybody around me. And I'm like, if you could just open the control panel on my back, you could see, like, I was convinced, that I was a robot, right? So there's that. There is the just rampant metastasized ADHD that I have. So, like, you're talking about reading books. I cannot sit still and read a book. I can't sit still and listen to a lecture. I can't sit still and listen to a podcast. I have to do something else at the same time. Otherwise, my brain just won't let me. It's like last night lying down, trying to just clear my head. My brain goes somewhere else. So I have to go for a drive. I have to go for a walk. I have to doodle. I have to sculpt something with clay. I have to play a game on one screen while the podcast is playing on the other. It is so hard for me to sit and be calm and just read something.
this cracks me up because like I can barely fold laundry and watch a YouTube video. Because when I'm folding laundry, I want to do it right. And I'm pretty good at it, and I got the droop, 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 and it's like flat. It looks good.
Yeah.
I can't do that and listen to Rogan or whatever. Like I can't. I can listen to it, but as soon as there's a screen, like I have to either watch the screen or I have to fold the laundry, and so I am just not. Yeah, you and I are really different that way.
If I sat down to read a book right now, number one, I would fall asleep is the most likely thing. I didn't get good sleep last night, which I usually don't. So there's that aspect. The second thing that would happen is I would immediately want to quote and share a bunch of stuff from the book online.
Yeah, I struggle with that. No, I struggle with that too. I struggle with that too.
Because I'm like, this is so good. Like I need to tell everybody about this, right? So that happens. Number three, my mind just wanders or I get bored or the sheer physicality of it is annoying to me. I'm too aware of my body and why I'm uncomfortable and why this position doesn't work. And man, I'm thirsty. I should go grab a drink. So like, it's just so many things are happening that it's like, I'll put on an audiobook and I'll go for a drive and then I have to focus on the road. And then in my head,
but you can kind of fade out. Well, I mean, look, I would say to you that in part, that's a result of your formation. I'm not arguing with your baseline. I know that you're more ADHD prone than I am, right? I get that, so I'm not, like I know that I'm a little bit of a freak that way. But I don't think we're that different.
I mean, I used to be much better at it. So I would agree with you. Like, when I was a kid, I read voraciously.
Yeah, right.
And I had those experiences that you were talking about of like, I would always get lost in novels.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny is my son Ivan, who we're pretty sure he's on the spectrum, he's ADHD.
Yeah.
He plays video games. He watches YouTube. He does all the same stuff. He reads more than anybody I know. Now, he's not reading literature. He reads fantasy and science fiction stories and stuff like that. But he reads constant.
Interesting. Yeah.
He lies in his bed at night and just reads.
Yeah.
And so for someone like him, it's not having that effect. I mean, he dropped out of high school, but he reads every single day.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to like make that make sense. It's just.
Well, I mean, one size solutions are dumb, right? I mean,
but it's why I push back on generalizations because I'm like, what are we really doing?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I pushing back on the generalizations, but I'm trying to. Interestingly enough, I'm trying to be inclusive enough. That's why I sort of talked about the spectrum in my classroom, and I don't expect all the kids to get it like I do. I mean, I've read these things dozens of times, right? But I know that even a little bit of good is better than no good, right? And so that's kind of why I am defaulting to some generalizations. It's like I tell the kids all the time, look, I don't expect that any of you are going to go to college and study poetry, right? I don't. I mean, I know the world that they live in. I know the pressures that they're under by their parents, et cetera. But like right now, like in this little walled garden, like this is what we're going to do. And even if this is even if this is literally the last poem you ever read in your entire life, let's say that I'm teaching seniors, I want you to have this moment. And
that's because to you, it's not vegetables. I don't know how else. Like Kale, I'm embarrassed to admit, I have never enjoyed Shakespeare in my life.
Yeah.
I have read all of it, probably. Not all of it, but a great deal. I've been to many live performances done by competent people. I've seen some fantastic performances. I think Mozart's The Magic Flute is one of the best operas ever written. And that's, I believe, based on a Shakespeare, is it not?
No, not really, but keep going. It's fine.
I'm messing up.
It doesn't matter. But
I mean, I've seen great performances of Midsummer Night's Dream. I've been to Othello. I've been to all these different things. Shakespeare does not unlock for me.
Yeah, I wonder if it's connected to what you and I were talking about offline the other day about
aphantasia.
Aphantasia and word images.
Like I spend so much time trying to decode the language that the meaning eludes me sufficiently that I get frustrated and I just want to walk away.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And I'm just saying that because as an intelligent, literate person who is a writer and like, that's not a pleasant experience for me. And I can understand why kids going through school can very much be like, man, I just don't get
that. But I would say, not to toot my own horn, but I venture to say that if you and I sat down and we worked through Hamlet together, just like literally like page by page, like I think we could achieve an unlock.
Okay.
Because I've certainly had it with kids who are vastly under horsepowered relative to you.
But my inclination has always been to say life is too short to read boring books because there are too many books worth reading. And so like for you, like Shakespeare is super important. For me, it's like, what can I get from this that I can't get from somebody who wrote it more clearly or in a manner that I'm drawn to?
But that's an extraction model that I'm ultimately not comfortable with, right? It's not like I'm not getting something out of Shakespeare. I'm getting Shakespeare, right? And I'm playing word games here.
No, but I want your different perspective because I am more utilitarian about this.
Yeah. That's funny. You are, aren't you? That's funny. No, that to be able to read yourself into a position to cry, with Hamlet, like in part, I grieve the way I grieve because I've learned to grieve with Hamlet. I've learned to grieve with Juliet. I've learned to grieve. I've learned to be humiliated by Sir Gawain having to go back to Arthur's court and say, yeah, I crapped the bed. I failed my test. You know what I mean? Like the way that I rage has been forever altered and changed and grown because of Achilles. And I could just
my approach is more human beings tell variations on the same stories over and over and over again because there are only so many ways you can tell a story, but you can put it in a way that is more or less beautiful. And so I don't think
beautiful. It's
transcendent. I don't know, but
yeah. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
The point that I'm trying to make is that different idioms work differently for different people, right? There are some people who absolutely despise spicy food, and there's some people who can't get enough of it. And so the universalizing of we have to these are the greats and that's it. I really struggle with that because if I am moved more by a different manifestation of an equally compelling human drama, but because it's popular fiction or because it's, not one of the classics or whatever, then people are like, well, that's not good enough. Right.
But I'm not a snob about
I don't think you're being a
stuff,
snob. I think you think it's that there are entries in the sort of in the human log of literature and that are for whatever reason really uniquely profound. But I wonder, and we're going to go way off topic if we stay on this, so we'll stop because I know we want to wrap this up. But I wonder if that's just self-reinforcing. We've told ourselves over and over again that, for example, Shakespeare is the greatest, right?
Yeah.
And so we just keep. It's an Ouroboros. We just keep chasing our own tail.
Right. And I would be more open to that kind of almost a kind of relativistic argument if I hadn't seen kids be transformed who are radically different from one another. If it was just because there are certain novels, that you just know that the girls are going to love. There are certain books, the novels that the boys are going to love this. Right. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I would argue that there are certain things that are bigger than our default tendencies of affection. You know, you know, like it would make sense that I love something like Hamlet. He's a heady guy. He's in his head. He's thinking, he's ruminating, and he's all those sorts of things. I am like 0% like Macbeth.
Mm.
Like I am not Macbeth, but damn it, if that play just comes alive.
I mean, you do consult witches every time you need to make a big decision.
You're not supposed to say that out loud, Steve. I am a Catholic in good standing. This would violate no, of course not. But yeah, I mean, but you know what I mean? Like like I am not a kill. I'm a goodness. Like is Kale Zeldin, could Kale Zeldin be any more different than Achilles?
Mm-hmm.
Right. But beyond, the sort of the differences, there's just something profoundly human that resonates with something deep in me, that doesn't require me to be the best warrior of the Achaeans, who's
right. No, I understand.
Zeus's
I
injustice,
understand
that.
I think all the best stories tap into those things.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
but I mean, it has been so rare in my experience where someone says, this is a classic, you have to read it. And then I read it and I'm like, wow, I was opposed to that. And I'm so glad I read it. Like it happens, but I think the only time I can think of that happened is I read Frankenstein last year at your prompting, which I'd never read.
Right.
And I really did enjoy it. It was unbelievably overwrought in its purple prose.
Yeah, totally.
To the point where I started talking like that because I absorb it.
Yeah.
And I just felt absurd about it. But I mean,
so I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Think of your schooling, from kindergarten through senior year of college when you graduated. How many, if any, did you have any profound experiences with a teacher in a classroom? Or were you in the situation where you could kind of see through the sham, like day 1, day 2, and you were just keeping time?
I don't know. Education has always felt so institutional to me. I mean, I've had unusually good teachers in the realms of, I had one in biology who I really liked. And it's funny because he would brag that he, would see people that he taught 20 years ago at the mall, and he would give them ask them the 3 parts of a seed, and they would go epicotyl, hypocotyl, radical. Here I am, I'm 48, and I still remember that, right? Like there are teachers that help you to learn and remember in ways that others don't. I was a huge fan of Dr. Regis Martin when I was at Steubenville, because he had a way of humanizing and beautifying theology, which I was drawn to because of its systematics. But he would always quote H.L. Mencken saying, religion is not a syllogism, but a poem. Like there were certainly those moments, yes. But I would say that it was a rare experience that I found my educational career to be profound.
Yeah. I think I've been trying to pay attention to this more, because I had a series of amazing teachers. I mean, just wizards, that were real professors in that kind of etymological sense, that they were bearing witness to something bigger than all of us, that, and they had an ability to sort of make it come alive and signaled to me in profound fashion that this was important. You know what I mean? That I think I have underappreciated, sadly enough, I've underappreciated the role that played in unlocking both diffidence, but also unlocking my kind of inner smartass, to sort of dismiss and to explain away or whatever it is. So I think I was radically disarmed in my classroom experience.
And I think that there's something really, really important there to tie it back to the theme of the show before we end, which is that education, in the model at least that we experienced and understood it to varying degrees of quality, was very much the flow of energy moved in a different direction than where we're headed. So, I would say Dr. Martin was the kind of professor who, more than I never walked away from one of his classes with a clearer understanding of the subject.
Mm-hmm.
But I came away with impressions of how profound a subject it was and how important it was to wrestle with it.
Yeah.
So that was big.
Yeah.
And so I guess where I'm getting at here is that education was the energy flowed from the expert to the student, or if you had a sufficiently Socratic method type teacher, the lead student who's leading the other students.
Yeah, sure.
I had a theology professor in high school actually who was like that too. But we're heading to a direction where if I need to know something, I'll ask. And I don't know what I need to know. And to me, that's the danger. That is the greatest danger of, I have this thing where I can look everything up. I have this talking computer where I can ask the questions. Well, what questions am I supposed to ask?
Right. So I think this is helpful to me because I think education, properly ordered and understood, is meant to show you how to love. And I know I keep circling back to this as sort of been a tagline the last couple of episodes that we've done, but
I'm so on board with this though, and I want to see you develop it.
Yeah.
Because I've come to the conclusion that there is nothing else worth living for.
Right. I mean, and by necessity, right? I mean, that's real. But look, we've joked about, we do this podcast together, for the love of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And we would also like to, have it be successful too. Don't the audience, if you're still here 2.5 hours in, but think about that as a sort of a guiding principle. What have you done today? I'm not just asking you this, but what have you done today for the love of the game? Right. And I know, God, it's so difficult to talk about love, right? Because it immediately just sort of sounds mushy, cheesy, what have you, cringe. But hell with it. I was saying the other day at my Symbolic World Summits that we have to learn how to be cringe again. But what I mean, is that
make cringe great again. That's going to be your hat.
I really like
Magnifica.
That's right. I remember doing that in my head. Actually, I was like, I do a hat now. Anyway, but this is the gambit, right? That education has been able to straddle these sort of two worlds. It's sort of like practical. It'll kind of like optimize the self so that you can sort of be part of the workaday world machine. But with AI, of course, we're realizing that actually we probably don't need you to be that anymore. In fact, one of the panics is that we won't be needed for anything.
Yeah, you won't even be a cog in a machine.
Right, exactly. So therefore, well, what are we even doing, right? Well, there's this other part of education that has always been a kind of an uncomfortable bedfellow, so to speak, which is, we are doing this stuff for the love of the game, right? And I've always known every minute, every year I've been in the classroom, I've always recognized that I know that the parents want the grade and they want the ACT score, the SAT score, and they want the transcript and all this sort of stuff. Fine. I'll play your game. But what I'm really doing is really subversive. And what I'm really doing is that I'm going to try to I'm going to try to show your kids how to love. Right. And that to me it might be the only thing we have left, Steve.
Yeah.
right? In the end of the day, as the machine, metabolizes us and discards us because it doesn't need us anymore, we can still love. And I think, man, I think that's where I am.
Well, I mean, I think that on the last AI episode that we did, we talked about the only thing left is to lean in to what really makes us human.
Yeah.
They're going to get better than us at everything else. And I, despite the scoffers, I really do think they're going to probably get better than us at everything else.
Yeah.
And they will soon be embodied, and then they'll get better at those things. And so I don't know what the world looks like for us. I'm not betting the farm on Robotopia.
Right.
But it's like the only provenance we have left to us are love and sorrow and joy and suffering and beauty and art and poetry and music and human. Like, the synthetic stuff is good, man. I mean, I've made songs on Suno where I give it the words and it comes up with the music, and that crap makes me cry.
Yeah.
Like, there is something really close there, but it's not, and I don't know that it will ever be all the way, because by nature, anything that a machine does to imitate a human will always be counterfeit. They don't have our experiences.
Yeah.
And even if they could become conscious and self-aware and develop some kind of feelings, and everybody's idea about the hard problem of consciousness is wrong, and it could emerge from complex systems, they still would think things very differently than the way that we do, because they're structured differently. Their experience of the world would be very different.
Right. And, what I would insert here, why this resonates with me is that, I believe that we're made in the image and likeness of God, and that we're made explicitly to love. Now, I know you have to accept certain axioms for that to be true, but you can kind of see where you can kind of see how I get there, or how I start from, actually, is that, a machine can be great, right? You and I both love our machines. That does, you don't have to hate the machines. But I certainly want to hold on to that notion that the human, is an icon of is a kind of a walking icon of the divine. And the problem of God's quiet,
Hiddenness.
the hidden, the problem of the hiddenness of God is real, and I feel that too, man, big time. But there's also this sort of this nagging sense that, uh, even when I can't hear God, I sense him through, my kids. I sense him through my family. I know that in a weird sort of way, that when I'm hugging my kid, that like there's something more than the sum of its parts there, right? Because we also know that kids can be a royal pain in the ass, right? But there's just this weird other thing, and I call that God, but this, anyway, independent of all that, that nagging sense, right? This, even when we're at our lowest of our lows, and we experience those, right? There's this, even in the privation that I experience through the lows, like it's an intimation of something bigger, better, more, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, even from my weird position vis-a-vis faith, like, I keep coming back to this thought again and again, that it's better to live like everything happens for a reason, because it's unbearable if it isn't.
Yeah, totally.
If it's all just random, then what are we even doing? It's
those
not worth putting up with suffering. It's not worth doing anything.
And those are not pat words, right? I mean, those are flowing from you from a place of radical privation, Right. But
like your thing that you always quote from Dumb and Dumber. So you mean there's a chance? Like that is basically kind of where I am. I was like, if there's a chance that this is happening for a reason, I will cling to that.
Yeah. Right.
Over this just being just a ritual of destruction that comes from entropy.
Yeah, and Odysseus is so profound, in this moment. It's like, in several very profound moments in his life, he's literally in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea on a board, adrift at sea, and he has this kind of moral intuition. There's this intuition of meaning, purpose, and love. It's not Christian, but it's boy, it radically anticipates that desire for connection and that desire for personhood. And for him, his only access to those goods is the root of suffering.
Well, only I've never really had this thought, so it may be incoherent, but it just came out as you were saying that. The only way that everything could happen for a reason is if you are either hated or loved.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground, like bureaucratic management of the affairs of men. Like either somebody wants you dead and wants you to suffer, or somebody is putting you through something so that you'll grow and become stronger.
Yeah. That's pretty stark, but it resonates. You know what I mean? That makes
and the
sense
ancient gods did both.
Yeah, you're right. I know. Again, the intuition, pagan intuition, is just such a profound and fascinating topic for me.
It's under indexed because it takes less for granted.
Yeah, exactly. Because, man, when you reread something like the Odyssey, it is such a radically religious book. It's like, and it's just so easy to not see it because we're all moderns, and like, we don't believe in the gods.
Well, everything
right?
in the ancient world was God of the gaps. I mean, it was, I don't know how this works. So
that's right.
The gods
exactly.
are doing it.
And there's something profound about that, even though I see it as a problem in the world of apologetics, right? But there's an intuition there that remains resonant, right? In fascinating ways that, for we Christians, we sort of we sort of very quickly sort of brush it aside as like, oh, pagans, dumb, right? But there's still this insight. And I think the medievals were able to be more comfortable with that kind of Christian pagan ambiguity. You look at somebody like Chaucer or, Boethius or any of these cats, that they were very comfortable, talking about, Hermes, or Aphrodite or Mars. They recognize that there's some sort of weird kind of insight that the pagans have there that, while theologically incorrect, is like imaginatively rich and important.
Yeah. And it's not like they had more to work with. I mean,
right.
They did the best that they could with what they had. And to tie it up with a bow, one of the things that disturbs me most in working with AI is that it is so, I don't know if ambivalent is the right term, but I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
About existential questions. It can give you a discourse on philosophy or theology if you prompt it for that. But if you just say, I'm not sure what I believe about God because of X, Y, and Z, it just doesn't care. It's like,
it's just flat. Is it just flat?
Yeah, it doesn't have. If you say that to any human being, they're going to come back with, I believe because of this, I don't believe because of that, I think that this is happening to you because of this. I really, like people tell me all the time, I think God is doing something in your life, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what they believe. I don't see it, but it's like, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe this is not a furnace, it's a forge.
Yeah.
Like a furnace for destruction.
Yeah.
It feels like one, but maybe it's a forge. But
Dude,
when you bring it to AI, it doesn't have a bias about like the most important question there is. I would rather deal with somebody who freaking hates the idea of God and thinks it's absurd than somebody who's just like, well, if that's what you believe, then I can give you supporting evidence for that. And it's like, I don't want that.
Like that's the voice of hell.
Push back on me.
Right?
Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Or tell me I'm right. Or tell me I'm thinking about it in completely the wrong direction. But don't do that, because it's gross and weird and tepid and fake and empty.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to be our masters at some.
Bruh, and we get to watch Ow My Balls for the duration.
I need to watch that movie again.
Yeah. So this is good, man. This is good.
That was a great. Thank you for ending on that.
Yeah.
Really
I tried.
appreciate that.
All right, man. Be well.
All right. Take care.